How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of your favorite swim bait podcast, Scales and Tails, episode 187. It's been a little while. We were on a hiatus. We missed a week for uploading, and then we had the holiday last Monday, and so therefore we are back on this Monday. Feels kind of weird. Feels like I haven't done this in a little while, but we're back, so you guys don't need to fret. You have something to listen to on your Monday commute to work. We're joined by a gentleman all the way over there on the East Coast. Originally, I'm pretty sure originally, at least formerly a Michigan resident. So him and I have the same love and passion for the Mitten State, if you guys are not familiar. Uh, in smallmouth, especially him more so being a smallmouth guy now than I have been, but seeing his stuff and talking with him, I'm like, oh man, I need to take the board on the big water, get myself some smallmouth. But we're gonna dive into all that stuff a little bit later, like we always do. We're joined by Mr. JP Hatch from Match Hatch Baits. You guys have probably seen him on my Instagram story, or if you guys follow really anybody else from the state of Michigan, they've probably caught fish on his baits, shared his stuff. It seems like this spring, I say season, but we had talked kind of like towards the tail end of winter, and to see the growth you've had already in the course of the last like 4 months, especially the last like month and a half, 2 months, dude, absolutely insane. And I would probably, we could probably say that that attributes from actually getting to fish around Michigan now and getting to fish your baits in the state and for the smallmouth and that sort of thing. And obviously, we'll talk about that stuff a little bit more. But before we get too deep into it, we'll let JP introduce himself. Then we'll do the icebreakers, the two icebreakers to kind of get the conversation going, and then we're gonna hear the big old story behind Match Hatch Bait. So JP, introduce yourself, man, and then we'll put you on the spot with some icebreakers.
Hey, how we doing? Really excited to be here. I think Adrian and I have probably been kind of running in similar circles, passing
Yeah.
each other one way or the other for years now, and so really excited to be able to finally do this.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited. So we'll start off where you're based now and kind of what you do as far as like your fishing out there, and then we'll put you on the spot with the icebreaker. So, like I said, formerly a Michigan resident, and now you're in Maryland, right? Or at least East Coast
Yep,
area?
exactly.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly right. So, grew up in my family, all from Michigan. That's where I learned to fish. That's really like my bread and butter, and what I know best is Great Lakes smallmouth fishing. Went to college at University of Michigan, lived in Michigan for a couple years after that, and then moved out to Maryland for work. So I'm here now on the East Coast. I live in DC, work in Maryland. Everyone always asks me, like, "Oh no, you're doing something political?" But, nope, just happen to be in the city. But yeah, so I'm out here on the East Coast now, and I'm gotten pretty heavily into saltwater scene. We have some really beautiful fisheries out here in the Chesapeake Bay with striper, redfish, cobia, a lot of cool tidal freshwater stuff with some of the Potomac River is pretty well known in the bass world, but we've got all kinds of cool fisheries within an hour or two's drive. And then really my passion still, or my favorite, is Great Lakes smallmouth. So I make time out of the year every single year to get back up towards where I'm from and get out on the bigger water, that beautiful Caribbean blue, and chase after those footballs. So that's kind of been, I'll say that's what I know best. I'm learning a lot of the saltwater stuff. I'm solid at it, but my bread and butter is definitely that big water smallmouth stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you went from the Michigan tagline, for you guys unfamiliar, is like the unsalted or Lake Michigan unsalted, whatever else it may be. So you went from unsalted to being on the salt, and that kind of being like your main thing out that way as far as like away from the Potomac and stuff. So that's kind of funny. You did a 180 in the fishing scene, which guys talk about, but you went out and did it, which is crazy. I mean, some of the stuff that I've seen, like you sent me some cast catches and stuff out. I'm assuming on the bay
Oh
or at
yeah.
least in the ocean, dude. Like the reds, like the striper. Like I've got a couple guys from like the Mass area or New England area posting stripers and stuff now, like on big fish, everything glides or on any bait, and I'm just like. I've been friends with Vic and those guys for many years now, and I've been seeing it every single year, all throughout the year, landlocked stripers and salt run stripers, and it's just like, I tell myself every time I see one of those pictures, oh, I need to go out there, videos, I need to go out there, I need to do that. And I saw one today, and I texted the guy, I'm like, I need to come out there and do that. Like I've been seeing this way too much. I need to come live that experience.
Yeah, Vic lives right by me. We chat all the time. You see I've got a wall of baits here, and that you won't see any FE stuff, and that's because it's all in the car ready to be thrown. I think a lot of the local, Vic's been smacking the shit out of landlocked stripers
Yeah.
on his stuff forever. And I think a lot of the hardcore salt only guys kind of finally like something
Mm,
clicked in their
yep.
brains and they started slamming him this year. And so I
Yeah.
think he had a little blow up there with the salt scene and some of his glides. So that was really cool to see. I mean, anyone who fishes any like California reservoirs or really anywhere that have striper, like swim bait guys know that striper love glide baits for 20 years. So it's cool to see
Yeah.
surf guys in wetsuits tossing them on 10-foot spinning rods, like all kinds of crazy shit. People are
Yeah.
figuring out that the glide gets bit. So
Yeah.
it's been fun.
Out on the middle of a bridge piling, hucking a 9-inch glide bait and just ripping on striper. Oh, dude, I could not think of many more things that I think I'd like to do in my lifetime because that's just absolutely metal. But before we dive too much further, we got to do the icebreakers. So you guys know the standard icebreaker we always have. JP, you and I are getting ready to go fish in the morning, whether it's up here or over there by you. We'll do both. So like we're getting ready to go fish in the morning, in the afternoon, whenever. We're going to fish. We're taking a trip. We got to stop and get the essentials. Where is
Mm.
is there a certain gas station or like convenience store you stop at around Maryland, the DC area that's like the go-to, like a Buc-ee's or 7-Eleven or whatever you guys have around there? Like what's the go-to while in Maryland and then what's the go-to when you're back up at home?
Yeah, back in Michigan, I don't have a specific thing. Down here, I'm kind of a Wawa convert. Get
Mm,
my
yep.
sandwich. Get formerly I was a big Snickers bar guy, but my fiance now is allergic to peanuts, so I'm an almond Snickers guy now. And then just extra caffeine. I get sleepy, but that's pretty much it. Some kind of real food. Get my candy and energy drink of the day. Celsius recently, but
Mm. Interesting, interesting. So, yeah, up here we don't have like any like
no, they're
chain
not
convenience
branded. They're
stores.
just it's kind
No.
of a no, you'll get like a Subway inside of a
Yeah.
shell or something, but there's no like combination Bucky. I mean, Bucky's would be crazy. They
Oh,
should
dude, it'd
expand.
be
But
crazy. Like, I don't know because you're from a different part of the state, or a little bit of a different part of the state of from where I am. But like, I, easy marts are like the really big thing here, and they're all kind of the same. They all kind of have the same stuff. But there's a True North. I don't know if you've heard of the True North. They just built one in
oh, I
a
think so.
neighboring town, and excuse me, it's like a really nice gas station, convenience store, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, if they built these, like this would be kind of cool. It's like a smaller, dumbed down version of Wawa. Like there's no tap to tap screen, but it all has like fresh chicken, all the sandwiches and stuff. I'm like, this is like kind of cool. Like I can get behind stopping one of these in the morning if they were en route to my fishing spots. But unfortunately, it's the only one I've seen. Hopefully, they built some more though.
Have you seen that specialty jerky store? Like, it's not a chain, it's just a one-off built into a gas station off of 75, and it's incredible. They've got every kind of meat you can imagine. That's
Really?
if it's yeah. I'm gonna have to look up the name. Worth a
Huh.
stop if you're going that way.
There's one by me, and it's the Dublin General Store. They've got a wall like walls of jerky all over the place. That's like the local place. They've been around for crap. I think they've been around for probably 80 or 90 years, and it's starting to be like a one-stop shop place. Like they have the hardware, like the true Northern Michigan experience. They have the hardware store, the grocery store. They don't have any gas pumps, but there's a gas station right across the way. But this is in the middle of BFE. Like you're not passing it unless you get off the highway for an hour and a half to get there. So can't say it's necessarily on anybody's radar if they're not from my area. But the second question we have here, obviously we kind of try to cater the questions more so to the guest for the second icebreaker. And being a smallmouth guy, growing it up, doing it your whole life, like we can go to like prior your baits or even with your baits in the list. What are the top five like things that you have in your mind that you're probably gonna fish throughout a day for smallmouth? I know there's probably only like two or three, but like what are a top five if you had to give us five?
Yeah, I'll say let's say with my baits because I don't think I make every single thing that I could possibly be wanting to throw in a day. I kind of one of my guiding principles is like I think smallmouth have kind of two modes or they've got two real modes of thinking if they're in deeper water or really anywhere. It's like they either feed up or they feed down. So I'm looking at bait fish type presentations that are at or above their eye level, or I'm looking at, more bottom tracing,
Yeah.
hugging, falling presentations that are more down towards the rocks. And I think even with some bait fish, I find that they really key in on particular like life cycles of whatever fish they're going after. So if they're on alewives, that's a schooling fish that's going to be up high in the column,
Yep.
chasing after like there's pelagic, and then they call it benthic, which is the bottom oriented. Your gobies, your perch, your darters, sculpin, log perch, craws. Even I mean that's not a fish, but like um, so. Let's say if I have 5 rods, I'm probably going. I mean, I'm not leaving home without a 3-inch swim bait. Um, I think that's the most versatile smallmouth bait on the planet. That's the fine fish. You can dial them in with that, really anything. I make my own actually now, but Spark Shad for many years prior to that was the go-to. So I'd say number one would be either Spark Shad or Smelt. Smelt is mine. And then I've call it. I'm gonna have 2 bottom contact. I call it like bigger bottom contact would be like one of my chunkier gobies or nice medium football jig like something like an OW sniper. And then if it's warm enough water, I mean I'm definitely bringing a top water if we're talking June or later. Whether that's spook or a lot of my smallmouth baits are kind of predicated on at least in the Great Lakes, the water's so ridiculously clear that the fish see everything. They see you, they see your bait. So a lot of the faster moving and more power fishing stuff doesn't really come into factor unless you've got off color water or you've got enough wind that you're breaking up some of that surface visibility so they can actually like the light scatters and things start to look a little more natural. So if the wind's blowing, we've got spooks, whopper poppers, poppers. I'll say spook, and then no wind. Probably got some kind of weightless, probably nose hooked fluke as a top water, just skimming on the surface. What am I at? That's 3 or 4. Yeah, dragging jig or goby, small tube or Ned,
Mm.
small swim bait, top water, kick of poison, jerk
Yeah.
bait. Jerk bait and top water are kind of either A or B for me. It's just kind
Mm.
of just depends on water temperature.
Yep.
That's probably 5 there. I
Yeah.
guess 2 gobies, honestly. I'd bring my standard goby and my big swim bait goby. I don't have a lot of luck with, glides and stuff for bigger water smallmouth. I mean, the rivers, they
Yeah.
love them, but
Yeah.
I have difficulty presenting those in Great Lakes fishing.
Picture this: the sun rising over the mountains, your line gets tight, and the fight of a lifetime begins. Welcome to Lake Bacharach Lodge, Mexico's premier largemouth bass fishing lodge. Nestled in the heart of the Sierra Madre Mountains, Lake Bacharach Lodge offers world-class fishing, luxury accommodations, first-class hospitality, and expert guides who know where the grandes live. Whether you're chasing giants or kicking back after a day on the water with a frosty, cold, bottomless margarita, we've got you covered. Home to some of the biggest bass in the world, Lake Bacharach is truly an angler's paradise. Don't miss your shot at the bass of a lifetime. Book your trip now at www.lakebacharachlodge.com or call 806-316-8382 today. Lake Bacharach Lodge, truly the best in bass.
If you're listening to this podcast, it's safe to assume you're tossing big baits for trophy bass. You already know that treble hook changes are part of the game, but they don't always have to be a pain in the butt to do. Toit split ring pliers are hands down the easiest way to swap out treble hooks, especially on those beefy swim baits we all love. No more slipping, no more fighting your gear, just smooth, secure hook changes every time. Available in 3 fixed sizes in a full kit with interchangeable jaws that safely open up any size split ring. Toyota doesn't stop there. They offer a full lineup of precision tools designed with anglers in mind, including long and short nose pliers, scissors that cut cleanly on limp braid, and wire forming tools perfect for rigging those soft baits. So up your game with Toy, because when you're chasing giants, every detail matters. Check them out at toyfishing.com and be sure to use code SNT15 for 15% off your order. Again, that's toyfishing.com, TOIT fishing.com. And again, SNT15 for 15% off your order. Right. And we had talked about that, but to jump back for a second. So when he talks about clear water, guys, I know you guys have seen my pictures
Oh
and
gosh.
videos. So you guys have seen my pictures and videos of like my water. It's like, you know, 20-foot visibility, but it's got a tint to it. Like you can tell that it's deep down there. People are always like, "Oh my gosh, I could never fish that water." And it's like, mind you, JP, it's like a pier head. So like it's clear water, it's got some muck to it, but you go to where you're from. Like if you guys don't follow JP, check out the Match Hatch page. You guys can look at this water and be like, "Oh my gosh, Adrian's water is like porta potty water compared to what you have up there." Like you guys post videos, the group of you guys post videos, and this water is like it's 20 foot deep, but it looks like it's 8 foot deep. And it's until you see like a big rock or a fish, like the fish, you guys let the fish go and it just swims straight down. That's when you put two and two together. You're like, oh, this is like 20 foot of water, and it looks like it's like 7 foot of water. That's insane. So just to put that into perspective for you guys, when JP talks about clear water, it is Bahamas blue water. You see all the way down to the bottom in 40 foot of water. Just so we have that established for later in the episode, because I'm sure it's going to come around then too.
Yeah, the way I describe it is, as long as the surface is calm, I can actively sight fish in past 40 foot of water, probably 50 at the max. Up to 40 feet, you can spot, especially if it's a darker smallmouth on a lighter sand background.
Yeah.
You can both spot the fish, and if your bait also has enough contrast, if you've got a darker natural color, I mean, you can actively watch your own bait and sight fish. I mean, people are doing like flogger stuff, and I'm like, why would I bother? I could see
Yeah.
my thing the whole time. So it's a double-edged sword because in every single way, the fish they have just as much sensory capability, if not more, than you. In fact, much more, and they're much more in tune with their environment. So, you think you can see them 50 feet away. Well, they see you from 200 feet away.
Yeah.
So, a lot of it almost becomes more like kind of like hunting tactics. Like, how can I obscure my profile, make as little noise as humanly possible? It's a lot of fun. It's just like the ultimate. You'd think it's like shooting fish in a barrel, but it turns into like I'm really trying to outsmart these fish and like find
Yeah.
an edge on them. How can I downsize my line? How can I get a more natural presentation? How can I get 10 extra feet on my cast so that fish hasn't quite heard my trolling motor yet? How can like all kinds of, you know, pushing a lot of things to the limits just because of that crazy clarity.
Yeah, it's crazy how you can nerd out about that fishing, and then other side of the coin, you go to Lake St. Clair. That lake is like 12 foot deep all the way across. When I have gone, I've never been able to see bottom. Like it's clear, but it's got like a hue to it, a tint. There's always, dinginess to it. You could cast a ball-headed jig with a Kitech 20 yards behind the boat and reel that thing 5 times or 10 times out of 10, you're catching a fish right at the boat. Like those fish do not care. Those fish see a gajillion baits, probably a lot of baits every single day. I'm sure they know what a boat is and what a sonar is, but they don't care. And then other side of the coin, like what you guys have, it's crazy how much that smallmouth fishing can differ just in our state. Then you think of like those fish in like Idaho and stuff. Like there's so many different styles of smallmouth fisheries, and even like I said, just in the state of Michigan, we have so many different ones. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, St. Clair's interesting because for as big as the lake is or fish is, it's high flow, and that's really a current concentration area of the whole Great Lakes chain. So like different parts of Lake Michigan, relatively, if you just take the volume of water in the lake and relative to the actual flow of the Great Lakes, it's not that much. So you're not getting a whole lot of stirring and mixing. So the water is able to settle, and it also gets filtered a lot. But St. Clair is, we're coming out of the Huron, or the coming out of Lake Huron through the river there. And then that's just mixing with silt at a pretty decent clip in there. So it's just like a big churn. So you've got the same water that's coming out of Lake Michigan. It's the same molecule of water is going to end up down to St. Clair eventually, but it's just picking up speed as it's moving downhill and running through all these silt flats and whatnot, and it picks up a little more of that. Especially once you get down to Erie, it goes to the Detroit River again, picks up more sediment, and generally as you go down the Great Lakes chain, you'll get a little more dirt in the water, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
sediment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, the scenarios we have here, like as far as like fishing by me up on the pier heads, and then you travel 4 hours south to St. Clair, and it's just a completely different ball game. It's absolutely crazy. But enough kind of talking about that. Like I said, we'll talk about all this stuff. We'll touch on it all later into the episode too. But
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
so we've established you're a smallmouth nut. You grew up in an area where you have to, you got to be a surgeon with the casts, with the baits, to presenting these baits to the fish. You get maybe one chance at a fish, and if it follows it all the way to the boat and it looks up and it sees you, googly eye over on the side of the boat, that fish You're done. You're not going to catch that fish probably in the next day or in the next week because it's kind of figuring stuff out. So you obviously you had been catching fish and stuff, and like when did the idea of you creating your own line of baits kind of pop into your head, and what was the like we always talk about a reason for guys to make baits, whether it was like a hole in the market or an improvement on something that they thought they could put their put their idea onto. So what was it for you that you woke up one morning and you said, you know what, I'm gonna make myself a Goby bait for XYZ reason?
Yeah, I had probably a couple years of build up and then, one or two real aha moments, and I'm like, I'm doing it. So a lot of smallmouth fishing and a lot of my history with smallmouth fishing, I'll say generally my area just has monster fish. I mean, there's 4 or 5 different fisheries within a 50-mile radius of my childhood home that all have recorded 9-pound smallmouth. The state record smallmouth in Michigan is you know, zero point zero 0.02 shy of a 10-pounder, and that's within a morning's drive of me. And then there's all the Great Lakes fishers on top of that. So I know there are monster fish in the area. I've always historically had more success with tiny little finesse baits.
Mm,
And it feels like the bigger the bait gets, the more the fish just know something's off
yeah.
and they're not having it. I spent 3 or 4 seasons trying to, in places that I know had fish. Like the day before I was just here and I whacked them throwing a tube or this or that. And like, or even I can physically see fish. And I took pretty much every large swim bait I could find, get my hands on that I felt like might apply or might fish well. Went through all the mag drafts, all the, every half of the glides on the market, soft glides, hard glides, off the shelf, custom, multi joints, wicks, like really just, the whole arsenal from, the swim bait community,
Yeah.
and really was not getting the kind of reactions that I wanted. I mean, I can expect to catch a 6-pounder or two on most days throwing, the conventional finesse stuff, and I can't get a fish over 5 pounds to commit to a glide bait or a mag draft. And I just felt like something's off. It's not what not what they're eating, and they know it's not real. I can watch fish kind of get interest in, a 250 or a 175 and turn off of it. Like the bigger fish are just not convinced. Um, and then one day I was exploring a new area, and I knew gobies got pretty sizable. I've caught some doing some lake trout jigging on accident in like 200 feet of water. I pulled
Yeah.
up like a goby on my tube, which was pretty funny. That's happened a number of times. And I caught a smallmouth in about 12 inches of water. Not crazy for certain times of year. And the first thing it did was barely a 17 or 18-inch fish, and it spat up a 7 or 8-inch goby.
Wow.
And I was like, "Good Lord, yeah!" I was like, "This isn't even. This is a fish I wouldn't even take a photo of, and it's
Yeah.
it's eating something this big." I'm like, so then I spend the next month hunting down, like digging through Swim Bait Universe and underground, and just digging for like what even exists for goby baits. What can I get? And just being really unsatisfied with the options I was finding. I felt like there's you can put a paint job on a glide or whatever, and I feel like that doesn't accurately represent what a goby does, because gobies famously don't have swim bladders, so
Yep.
they physically can't swim in that elevated position off the bottom. So like they can get up for a little spurt, but like they don't have a slow lazy glide because they physically can't do that. Like they can take a jump. They're almost like a flea. Like they'll
Sit on a
jump and they have to get
pier
back to the
wall.
bottom. Yeah, so they'll just sit there, and then when they want to move, they have to like wiggle pretty fast to fight gravity because they literally can't float. Um, so a lot of hard baits just ruled out, and I'm looking at soft baits, and I'm like, yeah, I mean I've thrown a HUD before. But in 50 foot of clarity, like the bass knows that's not a friggin' goby.
Yeah.
So I just started brainstorming like what would my perfect big goby be. And it really wasn't even intended to be some kind of retail project. Like it was just a personal project for a long time. And I went through a bunch of like I had the vision of it. Like, yeah, I want this to be. It's a swim bait, but it's more of a jig. It functions like a jig. It has a tail, but it's something that you want to be dragging or maintaining close contact with the bottom. Um, and I just kind of kept going through different ideas and like, yeah, well, I've never had good luck with larger jigged hooked swim baits for smallmouth, I feel like they struggle to, even the larger fish, they get in different biting moods. And, if they're really fired up, sure, a smallmouth can still swallow a 7-inch citizen. But most of the time you're getting short striked, or they're not getting it all the way, or they'll T-bone it, or they'll headshot it. And like, it's not a largemouth. Like, it doesn't have a, 7-inch gape in its mouth. Like, they miss a lot, and so I came up, like, the idea of a line through was really appealing to me because I get, you get that treble hook exposure, in a little bit of a less intimidating package that they can get into their mouth. And then even better, because, famously smallmouth fight a little better than your typical largemouth. But, getting that bait to separate from the hook, just so you've got a 7-pound smallmouth jumping, and you don't have that weight hanging around in its mouth. That's heartbreak waiting to happen. So I kind of settled on the profile I wanted and the way I wanted it to work, and then had some cool other ideas we can get into later. But like, this is the result. So this is my 6-inch Goby line through bait. Meant to drag the bottom. This tail is super soft, and there's a nice like chunk of mass on the end here. So it actually, if you have a following fish or you feel like you've been hit, you can actually just kind of jiggle it in place, almost like a jig skirt, and the tail will just kind of wobble. Um, I mean, I really wanted it to be able to creep. I spent a lot of time fussing with the dimensions and size of the tail to get it to do, just barely ticking rocks, barely moving, slight twitches to the bottom of the line. Will get it moving. And then pec fins, that's how the gobies tend to sit on the bottom. Like, they'll spread their pecs out pretty wide. And then there's like the head posture where it's like head up, fins wide. And the fins also act as some nice stabilizers too, so it doesn't roll over on you, even though it's, a treble hooked bait sitting on bottom. So I just felt like I had something pretty good. I honestly didn't know quite how successful it was going to be. We've caught moderately decent smallmouth fishing down here in Maryland, and Virginia's better. So I do a decent amount over the winter here and caught some nice fish on it. And then I'd say this past month is really like what is the start of, trophy season up in northern Michigan. I got them all passed out to all my hammer friends and whatnot, and like, just some of the adoption has finally started to come, and both, myself getting up there I took my annual kind of journey back to smallmouth Mecca that I do every year. And that just went, better than I could have hoped for. We've got cool stories galore, but
Yeah.
I've been kind of shocked how well it's worked, even in just the first 6 or 7 months of putting it to work. So I guess that's kind of an overview, but
Yeah, dude. I will say, before I forget, I'm going fishing off a pier head tomorrow and fishing the 6-inch line through. If I catch a smallmouth, I'm gonna be stoked. You know what I want to catch on this thing? I want to catch a gigantic sheep's head on it tomorrow. That's what I'm aiming for, is a big old
oh,
sheep's head on it.
if you're aiming for them, they're hard to miss. I mean, usually people try to avoid them, but
Dude, have you ever fished Muskegon?
so I fished Mactawa a lot.
Okay, same exact thing.
Muskegon once or twice, but
The population of sheep's head on the Muskegon pier head,
yeah,
a gajillion to two bass. Like, it's insane. Dragging a
I'm
kayak
in
on
Holland a
bottom, like
lot
you're
for
gonna
Fourth of
hammer
July,
them.
and
So
yeah, it's nice because like you don't there's no research or patterning required. It's like I go back to Holland for Fourth of July, and like I just know that these dumbass sheep's head will be right there waiting for me. Like, I don't have to, it doesn't matter what time of day, it doesn't matter what I tie on. I can just walk out there and tug on a line. So
yeah.
they're dumb but reliable. Can't complain.
Dude, I will say, of all the years I've fished Lake Michigan, I did not hook, I had never hooked a drum sheep's head until last year when I went fishing for them out on the southern piers. Like, up here, I don't know about up by you, maybe you guys have seen them every once in a while, but like around my area, you'll see them every once in a while. But like, I have never run into hooking or landing one. Phil caught one on the baby taxi trout like 4 years ago off a pier, and that was the only one I'd ever seen on the piers that I fish. And I was like, "What the heck, dude? How are you lucky, quote unquote, lucky enough?" I have the I love the quote unquote shit fish that everybody else hates, but I like those fish. But yeah, I was like, dude, how did you catch one of these? And I've lived here for 20 years, and I've like hardly ever seen them. Like this is BS.
I had I don't know if you saw, but a lot of the fish pictures I was taking on my bump board, I have this Yeti cooler on my boat, and front and center is Dogfish Rodeo sticker.
Yeah, yeah.
So I know your love
Yeah,
for
dude.
the rough fish,
I actually
the junkers.
this guy, the jig one, I had so many bowfin eat this thing a couple weeks ago, but they were just nipping at the tail. They weren't obviously getting the hook.
Mm,
I was trying. I swung into one and it had like right behind the hook, and like sometimes when you hook into a bowfin, they clamp jaw, so like they'll come up and you think you have them hooked and then they just shake off.
yeah,
But it was insane. I thought I was gonna be able to send you a picture of a bowfin on
that's
it, but
almost an advertisement for me. You're telling me you got a bowfin clamping on the tail and you didn't lose the
yeah,
tail?
that's okay. So that's
That's pretty
what
great.
we'll go into that because this is something that I have a couple questions about, and I figured you could elaborate on it. So if you guys are not familiar, they are, correct me if I'm wrong, JP, these are silicone baits, right? Silicone soft baits.
They are. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
So
Not the first,
silicone,
I'm sure won't be the last, but
yeah.
definitely, not as common as your standard plastic sol or PVC type baits.
hmm So mind you guys, these will be like I talked about it in the Instagram reel. So if you guys heard that, I'm sorry, but for anybody who hadn't seen it, these baits are silicone, so you're gonna be able to like obviously it's not the same thing, but think of like your Z-Man Elastec, like how this bait will last you a gajillion fish. Like JP just said, advertising point there, and I didn't even wasn't even purposely trying to do it. Bowfin have kind of these sharp little teeth, like kind of worse than a pike even. And I had fish, chewing on that tail, chewing on that big paddle tail, and the tail was still there. So if you guys are watching, I mean, you can these baits, especially if you're a guy who's catching a bunch of smallmouth with like the occasional walleye or pike, like this bait you make an investment, this bait is probably, obviously outside of casting it off or getting stuck on a piling that you're not able to get it back from. Like, there's a good chance this thing lasts you a handful of seasons if you take care of it. And that leads me into the next question. So you sell these baits, or if somebody buys a baits, they get them in your bag. I don't have one handy. The bag with the card stocking on it. Um, is there any specific way I do or don't have to store these? Can I throw them in a box, a
None.
little crumpled up, and will it come out
Absolutely
straight?
none. That's one of the best parts. So, when I was considering, like I said, this wasn't meant to be something I sold initially. It was just something I wanted, and I was like, what do I want it to be made of? Like, not what's economical, not what's convenient. What can I get some kind of factory to make for me? Like, what do I actually want? And just going through like the pros and cons. You've got plastisol, easily manufacturable, easy to get. Rips crazy easily. And versus you can make some of the Z-Man stuff yourself. That's not out of the realm possibility, but like that chemical melting
Yeah.
is such a pain in the ass. Even more of a turn off for me is that people that have seen gobies in the water, um, they've got that head up posture, and having a floating material utterly kills that. I mean, you'd get this tail would start sitting like this, like
Yeah.
with the shape of the tail would just float right up and look like crap. And then, the head would actually, you'd have to put a significant amount more weight into this to get it to sink right because it counteract the float. And then that would throw off the center of mass. It would just dive like a brick like this. So near neutral buoyancy, no, doesn't kink in the heat. I mean, I could show you my personal blog. You take my word for it. I've got Plano Deep 3700 with, a couple dozen of these just jammed in there. Don't care if they're bent, doesn't matter. They don't melt. Silicone's the same stuff most of your spatulas are going to be made out of, so, stick it in a frying pan and it'll be just fine. And then, I'm an engineer by trade, so I like, having, um, call it reliable material specs and just comparing numbers. You just look at like the shear, the tensile strength of
Yeah.
just silicone versus plastic. I mean, it's 10 to 1. Like this,
hmm
if you take an equal size sample of plastisol and silicone, it takes 10 times more force to rip it or scratch it. So, um, even if you've got fish biting on the back of it, and like even smallmouth teeth can be, they can vary from very dull if they're eating crayfish to kind of tiny needle-like if they're
Yeah.
just eating a lot of soft bait. Like they can wear down their teeth. But even in the worst case, like it takes a lot. You couldn't take a pocket knife and scratch this. Like it doesn't wear down over time, just like with repeated friction or scratching like that. So
Yeah.
really durable, really um, no frills, no special consideration required for packaging or storing. And people have asked me like, "Hey, would you put them in a clamshell?" And I'm like, "For what?" Like I'd have to just add $2 to the price, and it
Yeah.
does nothing for you. Like it's genuinely not a consideration. So yeah, super versatile, super structurally sound, and not doesn't put any demands on you as the angler of like I'm gonna put this under my car seat and sit on it and then
Yeah.
pull it out on Saturday morning and it's good to go. Like you can do
It,
whatever you want.
okay. I figured, but I still have all mine hanging up because I'm like I'm like I know materials and I know,
It
other
can't
baits and
hurt. I
silicone.
mean,
Yeah. But I'm like, okay, now I can put them in my tote and I can, leave them in my crate, and when I'm gonna go fish, I can just grab it, throw it in the car, throw it in the backpack, and I have all the stuff together. Because some baits, some soft baits, whether conventional or not, you have to keep it in the clamshell, which is, that's fine if that's what the builder is content with doing. Keep stuff in the clamshell, or like some of these other baits, like smaller finesse smallmouth baits, leave it in the clamshell, or you throw it in a box, and after 2 hours you pull it out of it being in the rod locker or whatever, and you got a tail that's all
yeah.
kinked up, and you forgot your jet boil or your little Coleman grill at home, so you can't boil lake water to straighten out the tail. Like it's such a that I would say that's the biggest drawback on a soft bait outside of like the integral of the material integrity of the material is like storage. There's really, unless it comes in a clamshell package, there's no good storage for a soft bait. You're just throwing it out there. You think of a HUD. You have a HUD 68. You don't take that out of the package unless you're ready to fish it, because once you pop those staples out and you pull that cardboard backer out, like you have to keep it tied up, or you got to hang it somewhere, because if not, that tail's going to bend and you're going to have a little bit of homework to do later down the road when you decide to fish that thing. You got to boil some water and keep it straight or whatever else it may be. So your bait being silicone, I don't know personally, if I was to be looking on the market for a bait like that, silicone is like the top of my list, especially being up north where we do have walleye that have teeth. We do have pike, muskie, and a lot of the water lake trout. Rainbows kind of, just depends. But like to have so many toothy fish in the freshwater scene, also do the 180 back to Maryland, the DC area, the Mass area, the saltwater fishing scene. Like all those fish have
Oh,
teeth.
they've got a lot to
They
show
don't
you.
matter. They don't matter what the hell they're eating out there. So for that to be like a dual, quote unquote dual purpose thing for whoever's fishing this, like that's a pretty unique feature, I think.
This is the exact bait. I don't know if I put up my cast to catch yet, but some of those red drum videos with just those schools of
Yeah.
monster Chesapeake redfish, and they've got they're not slashing teeth. They're not slicing teeth. It's not a barracuda, but I mean, they've got strong, conical, crushing, scraping,
Mm.
destroying teeth. This bait's been through about 2 dozen
Wow.
big ass redfish, like all 40 inches or north of that, from 30 to 50 pound fish just munching on it. And it's got some battle scars. It's scratched up around the head, but I mean, this part, the functional part, is
Yeah.
good to go. I mean, you've got some little nicks on the fins and whatnot, but that's cosmetic damage only. This is get a hook file, and this guy is actually. I'm hoping to use this again on Sunday. I have no plans to grab another one yet. I
Yeah.
need.
So say miraculously somebody rips a fin, or like they fish the heck out of this thing and they rip that, like the little dorsal fin like you just showed. Is
Yeah,
there like RC glue or what's that, like what if you were to, if somebody was in need of repairing a bait, whether it was like fixing the fin or whatever else it may be, what is like do you have something that you would tell somebody to use if they ever ran into that situation?
yeah, it exists. I'm actually talking to some suppliers to see if I could get a smaller quantity
Yeah.
package, and I'll just put it up on my site. This is the go-to stuff. I know
Okay.
some
Yep.
others work,
Yeah.
but this will do it. This is $30 a tube, and it's way more than you need for repairing small lures.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to get some, little like baby super glue
Mhm.
sized, ones, and hopefully I can make those available. I'm testing some other ones, but still epoxy. That's the that'll do it. It's pricier than it should be, and it's not really sized appropriately for fishermen. So hopefully more to come on putting some little accessories available up on my site. But that's yeah. I mean, the thing is, a lot of the things that would rip on this are either. I mean, if you truly get, especially on the smaller sizes, like it's this, the strength is all relative to the cross section.
Yeah.
So if you've got, a 3 inch bait with a smaller tail, if you get a bass that just decides to clamp onto the tail and you set the hook into it,
You
like that will
winch it
rip.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. So just like a bigger, you know, it's twice the size, it's twice the thickness, twice the strength. So that's how the bigger ones will survive your bowfin, your pike, and whatnot. But like a smaller bait, you get a 3 inch guy
Hmm.
and you get a bass that just takes onto that, like there's a lot less bulk there to
Yeah.
survive that. But a lot of I mean, if you wanted to make it look pretty, you could get the glue. I don't. I mean, a lot of this is cosmetic. The dorsals and what the dorsals serve as a weed guard somewhat, but pec fins can be cosmetic. They do act as kind of kickstand stabilizers a little bit, but they're also pretty soft. So as long as the bulk of the fin is still there, in some ways, I honestly think the more beat up it gets,
Yep.
the more realistic it
100%.
looks. I'm a big believer, at least in is really clear water areas, of that matte finish. I really don't like that, that totally smooth, shine, reflective, you know, car hood looking surface off the
Yep.
top of my baits. So my stuff is all textured in a way that knocks that at least base layer of sheen off. But if you scratch it up even further, it looks even more kind of roughly and matted. So
And
as long as your business end, your hooks are still intact, bring your hook files and um, usually just send it.
yeah. And you also got to think like if you guys are not familiar, I would assume, so I guess I can't say I'm familiar too, but I would assume being a goby is a hell of a time getting crushed up against rocks, trying to swim in between rock jams or sit up on pier walls, getting blown out with big waves, probably getting chased by fish and stuff like it's talked about all the time like no quote unquote bait fish is perfect. It's never the ideal paint job because you can't master like a beaten up bait. And the one you just held up right there that you've been catching all those reds on, like, yeah, I have seen some hellacious looking gobies looking down on pier heads and stuff like that. Like stuff that looks like it got
Yeah.
half digested and coughed back up, or stuff that is all like got sores and trying to sit on rock piles or slide under rock piles and stuff. Like being a goby, like it'd be a hell of a job. So once, like you
They
said,
they
once
put out
you,
studies. Every year the DNR will do kind of like diet studies of
mm,
what the predators in particularly like Michigan. I'm sure they do it for other ones, but that's the one I pay attention to.
yep.
What they're eating, and I mean, it's hilarious. It's probably on mass 50% of all the food consumed by Lake Michigan game fish is gobies. Up to like lake trout, it's like
Oh,
85% of the diet is gobies.
insane.
Smallmouth, it's like 40 to 60 if I'm recalling right. But I mean, it's the main course and the second helping, and then sometimes for dessert also we've got some more gobies, and then like
Yeah.
a sprinkling of like whatever population of Cisco and perch has managed to survive the cormorant invasion. But a whole lot of gobies on the menu, and so that's not a fun life. They're getting beaten to hell. And I mean, there's a reason you see mostly two
Yep.
to 4 inch ones, and not a lot of 5, 6, 7, 8. Even though they get that big, I mean, it's tough life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're invasive, so it can't feel too bad for them.
Right. And I was gonna say like I've talked about it before on the show, and I actually have a I have a YouTube video like written up about the quote unquote invasion of the zebra mussels and gobies into the Great Lakes, and kind of how uh, quote unfortunately it has been for the Great Lakes, but how just the uptick in the fishing we've had here, the fish growth we have
You ever
on
get your
top
hands
of
on
like,
that book?
what'd you say?
Did you ever get your hands on that book?
No, I remember talking about it. I couldn't
I
remember
might
if it was
send you my copy, honestly. Remind
because
me later. I'll send you my. If I can find it, I'll show it off. But
dude, like I don't know if you'd ever heard it before, but like dude, 10, 15 years ago, like yeah, I remember you sending that to me now. But when the before
Pulitzer Prize winner. It's like the entire ecological history of the Great
oh
Lakes, and
dude,
it's
I'm
like
reading that
how
before I put out the video
from
because
like
it's
the
gonna be
arrival
real
of.
good.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. I'll send it to you actually.
Sick, dude. I appreciate it. But like the like people used to hate eating lake trout. They were super greasy when they were eating the alewives. Full circle, they start eating gobies, and now you take charters and charter captains. I'm friends with a couple. They used to be pissed off, 6, 7 years ago when they would catch a limit of lake trout, and now they're like, "Oh man, we'll catch a limit of lake trout, then we'll go catch some kings, and I'll have some happy clients because these fish taste so much better now because they're eating the gobies and not the alewives." So I'm sure that's just what I know based off of some videos and stuff. Once I read that book, I will be further more educated in the whole thing. And that's, dude, I'm gonna read that before I make that YouTube video because then I'll have some knowledge and some credible sources to make because I know what it's done like for our fisheries just from my 12 years of fishing here. But if I'm hyped, I'm gonna read the heck out of that thing. But the other thing is so your baits you offer a couple different colors, variants, custom colors, and that sort of thing. Dude, for people who do not are not familiar, it's not like a shad. Like it's not, chrome silver. They're like rusty brown. But that's the thing that I was getting at. There's like, dude, I've seen so many different color gobies. Brown, like red, rusty red. I've seen jet black
Yeah.
ones. Like it's dude, it's insane. I don't know. I'm sure it's probably the same up where you're at too. Like there's just a gajillion different colors and it's crazy to see. And so when people are like, why does he have so many colors of this quote unquote bait fish profile? It's because they come in a gajillion different colors.
Yeah, and a lot for me, because they come in so many colors that you can't really, at least I don't know any pattern of what color goby is going to be where, what
Yeah.
time of year. I think it's pretty random. So to me, it's a lot more about, okay, does this fit the bill as it's natural enough to be passable? And then it's about how is the fish seeing it? How am I getting the fish's attention? What is the bottom color contrast? High sun, high clouds, different light conditions. So, I mean, really the only thing that I would ever care to bring in, I'll bring other stuff just because I can, but all I would ever need is really just, there's
Yeah.
dark brown and there's tan. And
Yep.
that's really it to me. I think especially for a new bait that they haven't seen before,
Yeah.
um, probably 9 to 9.5 times out of 10, just using the darker brown just for because it's still natural, but
Mhm.
the contrast against the bottom. Um, Honestly, one of the coolest things about Clearwater is the way that it's kind of like other people having scope. I don't have scope, but at least Clearwater is kind of its own scope, if not better in most ways. So seeing what the fish see and seeing how they interact with
Yep.
stuff. Um, when you have a darker profile, really even just the shape of the bait in general, but the darker profile really makes it stand out and get noticed from further away.
Mhm.
This has the drawing power of like, when I fish the 250 for
Yeah.
largemouth. Like I will start my cast, even if I don't get bit on the cast, I'll start my cast, and by the time I get back into the boat, there were no fish around me before, and suddenly there are 5 to 20 fish that are
Yeah.
just been pulled in from whatever cover they were looking at, and they caught a glimpse of the bait, and they're like, "Well, we're gonna go check that out," and they'll
Yeah.
just come and oh, like it's like a magnet. It's unbelievable. On this trip with me, uh, caught 2 3 weeks ago at this point, and we're having a solid day out there on Lake Michigan, and I had released this 5 pound fish, and I was taking a video of it with my phone, and it swims off, and then it swims over to a different fish, and they kind of pair up next to each other as like they're going. We're like, holy shit, the other one's way bigger. And we just weighed that one, so we're like, all right, so that's a 5, that's a 6 something. So he was throwing he'd taken, I think this was his second cast ever throwing the Godzilla Goby, and he had it way out to the left. It wasn't even near this fish, and he's like, grab a bait, grab a bait, grab a swim bait, grab a little thing. So I'm like sight casting, pitching little 3 inch swim baits at this big fish, and it's kind of interested. It sees my 3 inch swim bait and it
Yeah.
goes towards it, and then he's finishing up his cast with the Godzilla, and like out of the corner of its eye, this fish sees the big goby coming, and it was going towards mine, and then it makes a hard 90-degree turn and just zips straight over to this thing, and it's like checking it out from about 10 yards away behind it, and then my buddy plays it perfectly. There's like this big boulder closer between the boat and him,
Yeah.
and he like reels the bait up next to the boulder and tries to like hide it under the rock, And then we watched this big fish not just come in for the quickest path from A to B. It actually goes around the opposite side of the
Oh,
boulder to like hide itself because it
yeah.
from this to hide itself from the bait. Like we got to watch it hunt in real life and circle back around the other direction and then come and fucking tag it and like pin it to the rock from the other side.
Oh,
Um, and this whole time, because I was so excited to like, pitch my little finesse baits at it, I never stopped. I never hit stop on my phone.
yeah.
So I'd been recording that 5 pounder I released, and I just threw the phone somewhere in the boat. So it's like sitting on the deck, filming up in the
Picking up,
air,
yeah.
while my buddy sets the hook, and then like this giant drag slip, and I have like a shriek in the background that sounds like friggin' R2D2. Um, and then we watch him land it. It ended up being his PB. We got it on video on accident, which is the audio, and we sight
Great.
fished it the whole time. It was his second ever cast throwing this thing, and it was like a magnet. The fish just like came, and we got to watch it hunt and everything.
Yeah.
It was super cool. So that was like the Tuesday morning of a week long trip, and after that, we pretty much just had dual 6-inch baits just locked in our hand the whole rest of the trip. And we're like, that's all we need to see. We're throwing
Yeah.
this now. Um,
That's insane.
so
30
that's
feet
got to be the
away.
moment of the trip, I think.
Yeah, 30 feet away, and it sees this, this ominous goby swimming through, not a care in the world. And the fact that it's set up perfectly with that boulder, and like I, call back to what I mentioned earlier, like these goby like fitting in these nooks and crannies, all these big rock piles or boulders or whatever. I like plays it perfectly, sits it right there, and I thought you were gonna say it was the way I thought you were gonna say is like it was that smallmouth was sitting on the corner of the rock, like right behind it.
Mhm.
And I thought you were gonna say he like gave like half a real turn and it just poked its head out. That's when the smallmouth came up and smashed it. That's what I thought
Oh,
you
I
were
could see
going with
that
that.
too.
Yeah,
I'm sure it would set up that way if we had him there.
that's
This
so
fish
cool.
was roaming a flat, kind of on a sand. There's like sand and gravel spots, and then these random big ass rocks that, and the fish just like saw the big bait highlighted against the sand, like that darker profile, saw it from afar, and was like, "Well, screw your spark shed. I got to go check this thing out." And it was awesome. It was so damn cool.
That is
But that's the
super
kind of
cool.
stuff that like I feel like it helps me a lot in you know, I'll say moving quickly and like making decisions and like testing prototypes, and you'd get so much feedback fishing this clear water, even if it's negative.
Yeah.
You're just getting so much more information about what the fish are doing and what they want. That it really helps me learn behaviors that might take me seasons to figure out just because you see it happen. It's like a fishbowl.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the fact that you have, essentially it's like the big bass tanks at all the expos. Like you get to maybe not one-on-one experience with these fish, but you are experiencing 100 different fish play by play what they're doing with these baits, these colors. Insert X variable here throughout the course of when you were up here for the week. Like you get to go through so many scenarios with so many caliber fish that guys to be frank, in some of these other states may not get to run across unless they're like in that New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan area, like, or, Idaho. But like you're putting it through these paces of these gigantic fish that have been in this uber clear water for 15 years and they see this 6-inch bait and they don't even think anything of it. And that's kind of like for you as a builder, that's probably a tall tale sign of like, oh, I maybe not necessarily crack the code isn't the right phrase, but I figured something out that these
It's not a
fish
dud.
don't
Yeah,
even
that
think
was the
about.
moment that I was like, all right, it at least does its job. This is
Mhm.
awesome. And then it felt like it just proved itself over and over the course of, the next month, really. The one of my good friends up there, prior to maybe it was never really the record, because these Idaho guys have been apparently keeping their crazy stuff hush hush for a long time, but for at least a couple years, it was believed that my buddy had the world record for largest bag of smallmouth ever caught. He had just shy of 37 pounds in a day. Um, and that was thought, or like at least that was recognized
Yeah.
as this is the best smallmouth bag ever. But then once the Idaho guys got wind of that, they're like, all right, I guess we'll do some cast to catch videos
Yeah.
for 40-pound bags. Reportedly, there's a 43-pound bag out there, which is just silly. I've heard some stories of how those places fish, and it's kind of how to explain it. The Idaho reservoirs, as I understand it, are kind of like all of the famous California trout stock lakes,
Yep.
but just with smallmouth.
Yeah.
Because they eat small juvenile salmon and stocking trout up there in this reservoir, and they're pelagic fish, or they're eating large meals, and they eat big swim bait type stuff. So it's not shocking that it produces monster fish. I think it's probably more difficult fishing than your Great Lakes systems, honestly, because I think
Yeah.
the fish are pickier and they have like blitz windows where they'll just like attack these schools of like smolt salmon or kokanee.
Mhm.
So I've never been. Sounds difficult. The friend of mine the guy from St. Clair area, the one that I was talking about catching that PB.
Yeah.
He's actually going to medical school in a month, and he's going within a couple hours drive of that Idaho reservoir.
Mm.
So he went from St. Clair to the other
Yeah. Yeah, that
U.S.
spot.
smallmouth mecca. So he's in for a treat. I'm excited for him.
I'll I don't know if I have any pictures, but I'll tell you of a couple stories I've heard from those bodies of water from a couple good acquaintances, good friends, and dude, like yeah, outside of the Great Lakes and obviously upstate New York, a part of the Great Lake region, but that is like your chance. I mean, dude, 40 pounds, even 37, 38 pounds for your best five. I mean, what like Brady's caught what he have a couple weeks ago. He had 3 days of 30, like 31, 32 pounds. Like,
Great. Well, I
dude.
can't give Great Brady credit for the 30 because he'll be the first to tell you. He's like every time I get close to 30, I can't make it happen. He's had like
Mm.
multiple 29.8, 29.7 over and over and over. And he's actually pretty grumpy about it. I was like, hey, look, a lesser man would just round up and call it 30.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's like, I won't do it. He's like, not for my first one. He's like, I have to get it honestly.
Oh,
So he's got, his PB is bigger than mine, but he can't seem to put like, he'll get on an awesome hot streak of he'll
yeah.
catch 55s in a couple sixes in a day, and then
Yep.
they just won't add up to 30. It's the funniest thing ever because he's one of the biggest hammers I know, but he's just like that. This this bane of existence is the 30 pound mark. By the end of the summer, I think he'll get there, or the fall, I'm sure. But it's been a funny happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I was close to a 30-pound bag on St. Clair, but the anchor 7-pound largemouth really helped us that day. So I
Ah,
yeah,
nice.
that's kind of a little asterisk next to it. But a couple days ago we did have a 29, or a couple weeks ago I should say, we did have a 29-pound bag, but obviously green fish, so it doesn't not necessarily a part of the conversation we're having here. But dude, yeah, like those guys that have been fishing your stuff. Mr. Old Mike Mulberry, if he's listening to this, he's another guy who I
Yep.
Mike, if you're listening to this, dude, I swear I did not. I was gonna fish with you last Monday, or yeah, last Monday, but I had to go to work unfortunately, and I knew it too. Like we were talking, we were gonna go fish an area, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we'll meet here, and you can ride with me." I'm like, "Sweet, yeah, awesome." Mike is a friend who lives down in the Grand Rapids area, but he came up my way to fish. I was like, "Sweet, he's a smallmouth hammer up here. I know he's got some good spots up here. Like we're gonna go out and we're gonna catch some fish." I had your bait tied on. I had all your baits in the bag, and yep. Friday I leave work and the guy I work with is like, "Hey, I'll see you Monday." And historically, I never work Mondays, so that was going to line up perfectly. And unfortunately, due to the holiday, I had to work a day over because I had that following Friday off. And dude, I texted Mike and I'm like, it was like a breakup text. I'm like, I know you're gonna hate me for this, but I'm not. I can't go on Monday. And
Oh my gosh.
I know he read that and he's like, this bastard. I know. I was like, I cannot believe it. And so it was like my last break of the day. So like right around 2:30 that Monday, I was like, oh, I did not want to text Mike because I know he's gonna say something stupid, talk about how he caught 30 pounds or a couple 6-pounders or something. So sent that text. I'm like, oh, how'd it go, Mike? And he's like, oh, dude, they were hammering the Godzilla, the line through it. And I'm like, I knew it too. Like I was like, I don't even need to text him and ask. And he sent me a couple pictures, and I'm like, damn, that looks like a lot of fun. I wish I was there rather than here at work right now.
Mike's gonna make us promise to not publish this until after his big tournament on it might be this
Oh
weekend.
yeah, yeah, it's this Saturday.
And
Yep.
yeah, yeah, he's like he's like I will not post any cast to catch or any other photos about your bait until after Saturday. He's like I am lock and key.
Dude, that part of the fishery is on fire right now. I had a local buddy go up there. They caught 200 fish in 2 hours, and he said at one point in time they had three double ups. So like him and his buddy caught a
Yeah,
fish, next cast him and his buddy caught a fish, next cast him and his buddy caught a fish. He said none of the fish were under 4 pounds. Like he's like they just found a beta school and just followed it and they're just bombing casts in there. I'm like, dude, I was he didn't. I
it's
think
really funny.
I gave him a smaller one of your baits, and he's like, it was in the truck, and I was like, dude, I wish I'd have given you a 6 inch. Like you probably, he was like, they were pecking the hell out of the 7 inch citizen, but they just weren't getting a hook. I'm like, dude, I wish I'd have given you a 6 inch. Like you probably would have hammered
Shoot.
him on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I call it birds of a feather. Like they really do. They're pretty like judgmental of each other. They won't associate with different size classes. Like
Yep.
it'll be a school of fives, it'll be a
Mhm.
school of fours, it'll be a school of the small fish travel in packs, the bigger fish travel in packs. I almost wanted to shoot myself one of these days. I like wasn't quite sure what was going on, and I wasn't really finding the fish. Then all of a sudden, like a dozen 6 pounders with one I think that was quite literally like 8 plus swam under the boat, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'll just tie the anchor around my ankles, jump in. This is atrocious." Yeah, so it humbles you in many ways. Like when you can see everything. I guess guys with scope get a lot of similar feedback, but it's pretty funny when you can very much see like the fish are not having what you're doing something wrong. So
Yeah. Or
at least I
like
know to mix it up.
yeah, or for sure, like scope, if they're like sideways, it's a bigger blob or whatever else not. But when you're looking down, you're seeing that fish down there and you sight fished a couple 5 and 6s that day and you're like, wow, that fish could gorge itself on those 5 pounders I was eating. That's when it's like, oh man, I wish I'd seen that on a scope screen rather than locked eye to eye with it right in my
Yeah,
boat.
that is the one time that I do wish I had scope because sight fishing is really excellent when you have conditions or cover where you're able to conceal your presence, like whether the fish are on the drop off and you go way up from the sandy side just so you're way up against the shore, or like there's a lot of wind, or like anything that really like obscures your boat presence or your whatever vehicle or waiting even. It's another great option if you can access an area just like with minimal sound and be as stealthy as possible from shore or whatever. um, but there's just a lot of sight fishing scenarios where you truly like the fish will be spooked if they come within 30 yards of you, and I can't see more than 30 yards. So, sometimes, the scope guys, they got 120 feet of visibility out in front of them. Like there are kind of pelagic roaming fish that aren't on hard points of cover that are in many ways like not uncatchable, but it's wildly inefficient to basically just fan cast about 50 square miles of open water, like when
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where they're going to be. Like if they're not hugging something that I can predict, or like a change in bottom composition or a ledge or a specific hard point or stuff. So some of those roamers, that's where the scope guys really put a hammer to them, and there's not much ways to replicate that without that that beam of visibility for 100 feet out in front of you.
Yeah. Just a little side tangent or side question I have. You're not necessarily related to the bait or the bait maker, but you came
Mhm.
from fishing within the last couple seasons a trolling motor kayak up in
Yeah,
this region, and now you brought your boat up here, whatever. Could you tell a difference from like fish
huge,
behavior?
huge, 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 huge. So on top of other things, I'll say in some ways the accessibility is both increased and reduced with the boat. I mean, there's stuff I can get to that's awesome. I can go explore further away from the ramp, further away from whatever launch point I choose. I mean, I would never have dreamed of a 20-mile run in a kayak. I'm not going to go fish offshore lighthouses and islands, 15 miles offshore without a boat. That simply was inaccessible before. So it's given me more ability to run and gun. I can, instead of having to pick, I'm fishing these 5 square miles today in the kayak. I'm picking this stretch of water. So, if I made a bad decision, if it's not happening here, I can actually just pick up and go
Yeah.
10 miles somewhere else. And that's almost revolutionary to me. I've never even been able to think like that before. What I have noticed is once I get there, the boat is worse. It's just in every possible way. Like it's nice to have more deck space and it's great to bring friends. It is dramatically more noticeable to the fish in every possible way. You've got waves slapping off of a much harder surface. You've got a bigger visual profile. Um, even just in spot lock, I mean, the wind drag of that boat is so much larger, even though it's a small skiff, but just versus a kayak, the trolling motor's working twice or three times as hard, making twice or three times as much noise in the water just to hold you in position. So, and there's a maneuverability aspect. Like if I want to get through a rock bar, like a shallow stretch that's only 4 inches deep, I used to be able to just hop out of the kayak and
Yeah.
float it right over and then go fish the pool behind it. That's no longer an option. So there's choke points in particular places that I can no longer access that um, I have to just approach them a different way. So it's cool that I can get to more places. I can go further from home and get to more unpressured fish. But some of the niche areas that I feel like I've really dialed close to home with the kayak, I can't replicate it with the boat. I mean, the kayak or the boat doesn't fit in the places the kayak used to. And a lot of this is like springtime shallow fishing based. It's the best time of year anyway. Fall's an excellent too, but like those seasons when they're pushing up towards that shallow, warmer water is when I feel like the kayak, in a lot of ways, like outperformed a boat or some other people's boats, just because I have the accessibility and stealth factor that is, not going to be achievable with the boat. And then once the fish push back offshore, then the kayak is like being up the creek without a paddle. I mean, that's good freaking luck. Like I'm not gonna have nearly as much success outside of that shallow stuff. But for those niche windows, the kayak was really like a game changer almost. I mean, just there's not many people doing it, and it doesn't feel like, hey, Lake Michigan, Great Lakes, like this is basically an inland ocean.
Yeah.
This does not feel like somewhere I want to kayak. People will
Yep.
talk about I want a 21, 22, 23 foot bass boat with, you know, flares and all kinds of like crazy safety equipment because it's genuinely an ocean. So the kayak doesn't feel like a natural fit, but in a lot of ways it was a really great tool for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we were talking about a spot and you're like, oh, the way this year's setting up, probably won't be able to go there with a boat. And then I was like, oh, kayak paddleboard. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, there is not a boat ramp within 60 square miles of this place. Okay, yup.
Yeah.
Definitely need a boat. And once you get there, you're gonna have to wade to get to that spot because you can't really access it with unless you've got a really shallow like running jet boat, like, oh, you're kind of SOL. You can go fish around that, but you're not gonna be able to fish the areas past it, which after you just said that, I'm kind of glad I asked that question. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, it'd be cool to like Marshall and I dumped the board into my local Great Lake, inland lake, and it was like paddling, yep, fishing the main lake, cool, paddle out to the pier heads, and it's like, whoa, these 2 foot rollers on a paddleboard are a lot different than when I'm fishing it on the pier head, or I'm even in a little 16-foot skeeter, 17-foot skeeter on a Wednesday night tournament. I'm like, wow, this is like the big water is a game changer on a small craft advisory is with 5 miles an hour wind on Lake Michigan. I'm convinced about that.
Yeah, it's all about wind direction. I mean, if you've got it building up over the entire distance of the lake,
Mm.
it's the wind is amplified
Yep.
significantly. I like to describe it. I'm still a kayak guy here, so I've got another kayak here with all the salt stuff. So the boat is now permanently Michigan boat up to my parents' place, and I'm back to my kayak here. And so I do a lot of saltwater stuff with that. And one of the great challenges of kayak fishing is, all right, we got 1, 2, maybe 3 foot rollers, pitch black, uh, tie an FG knot in the
Yep.
dark.
Yep.
That is not fun, but it's it's rewarding. There's a lot of cool things you can do with the kayak in shallow water that just aren't accessible with the boat.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of the shape of Michigan is set up, like there's different parts of the lake that you can fish with different variants of the wind. So like, oh, I can fish here if there's a north wind, but if I'm fishing here, there's a 30-mile stretch of no tree cover, anything coming straight north, or like a south wind, I should say. So it's kind of cool how you can play the wind like that. Like you and I were talking while you were here, and you're like, oh, if this wind pattern sets up here, I'll go fish this spot, and I have confidence here, whatever else it may be. Whereas like, kind of the ocean, I mean, yeah, there's probably places and breaks and stuff, but it's like if the wind's blowing west, you're probably gonna have a great time out there in the chop.
Yeah. Well, it's actually been really, really interesting, like getting into salt stuff more heavily. a lot of like it's almost just a mindset change in the way that you have shorter windows, like dealing with the tide cycles and then all the weather stuff and the different movement of the water. Um, it's just a lot more variables that you're juggling. And then coming back to Michigan, it's like, okay, this feels exactly like the ocean,
Mhm.
except I don't even have to think about the tide. Like it's almost gotten easier again.
Yeah.
So it's just a different kind of a perspective shift, but it's been really interesting. So like a lot of that, I thinking about the wind direction constantly and how it relates to the way the water's being pushed around, the way the shoreline's protecting you or not protecting you. What maybe you want the dirtiest water, you want the most, or if you've got a really crazy wind day, you might think, wow, if these waves hit up on this shoreline and the water funnels this direction, I'm going to get a crazy mud line of just dirty water that's being slammed into the shore, picking up sediment, and then that's like creating an ambush point that would never be there before,
Mhm.
with just this hard transition of um, sediment water and the true like the normal clean water. So there's all kinds of cool stuff, and for a lake, it's very condition like varying. I guess that's everywhere, but like there's a lot of cool circumstances you might not think about otherwise.
Yeah, and Lake Michigan is cool because in the sense of like say I don't know if you've ever heard this but if there's like Memorial Day weekend they do that big that big tournament down like south of Muskegon a little bit or maybe it's at Muskegon. Dude, there's guys if you guys are not familiar, Muskegon is a lake city or like lake shoreline town. So how I've talked about a lake that I fish, it's the lake and then there's a canal like a pierhead channel that connects to Lake Michigan. So it's all connected. It's you can just frickin' freely go and come as you please. So they launch in the main lake, and there's guys who run all the way from Muskegon all the way up to GTB. They make a 3 hour boat ride all the way up to Lake
Oh,
Michigan. They fish
that's
for,
allowed?
well, yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. They fish
Wow.
for, dude, like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Putts all the way back down. You got to stop halfway down at like Frankfurt or Pentwater
For
to
gas.
get fuel, and then you got to mission it all the way back. And so, I mean, and that's why it happens is because they can go up there and they can catch 29 pounds, where all the guys with smaller bass boats, especially if it's a really western day out there with the wind, like all those guys putzing around the inland lake, they're only going to catch 22 pounds. So you come back with 28 pounds of smallmouth. They only care about cashing the check. They're no way in heck they're running back up to GTB to throw those fish back out. Those fish are now a new residents of Muskegon Lake, unfortunately. So
Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, dude, that happens. We call them the big boy tournaments, like all the hair of the dog Sunday tournaments. Like those are the ones that like Jonathan Van Dam fishes, like all these like real hammers fish. And dude, like I'll fish that lake, and on a Sunday tournament, I know that there's a big boy tournament when there's all these nice skeeters and bass cats and stuff sitting on this pier head when I'm trying to swim bait fish, and it's just like these guys, they're just motoring in at 8 o'clock, and I've been there for an hour and a half already, and I'm like, these guys have ran up from Holland, Muskegon, even further south. Like I've heard of guys coming further south, and that's also to say, there was a guy one year, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, dude. I kid you not, he bought his Wisconsin license the night before. He ran all the way over to Green Bay, fished. He only got to fish for like 45 minutes. Turned around and cut a rug all the way back across the lake shore, or all the way back across the lake, the barren ocean that we have in the state of Michigan to weigh in his fish. And I think I don't know. It was something like either he won or he just won enough to cover his fuel. Like, dude, absolutely insane. And to like to have that many variants of fishing in Lake Michigan is crazy. You got all these inland lakes all the way up the lake shore, which are all, pretty decent or really good fisheries. And then once you get up north a little bit, you can actually fish Lake Michigan and catch really good smallmouth. Like it's crazy. And until you hear that story and that perspective, you're like, wow, that is like some of the craziest scenarios of fishing that I have ever heard. I don't know, maybe somebody has some other crazy story, but that's insane to think about and hear.
No, that's absurd. A couple of really good fishermen I know have started. There's almost been this wave of people migrating from bass boats to actual ocean designed center consoles fishing Lake Michigan. Like the guy Brady's partnered with in this same tournament Mike's in, um, he's got like a 25 foot. I mean, it's not a forget the brand. Like it's like a Grady White, like a type like a ocean boat type
Yeah.
thing, and he's got it rigged for bass. It's it's built to make that kind of crazy run, and that's just how they fish. And it's the one thing he's missing. I've been telling him he's got to get one of those sight fishing towers, like some of the
Yeah.
saltwater
Yep.
boats have, where
Yeah.
on top of the center console
Yep.
is actually a second steering wheel, and you can stand up there and drive and like look
Yeah.
down from 20 feet on top. Those are real popular down here for cobia in particular.
Mhm.
But that would be a crazy addition with the clear water and that that ladder high
Yeah.
vantage point. You'd see every fish for a mile around. It'd be sweet. Next
Yeah.
year, I'm sure he'll get that done.
Like
But
the style of fishing you guys do, I told my girlfriend like yeah it'd be like I would kill to have like a little 16-foot bass tracker, but I also thought I was like if I was like serious about like staying in Michigan and wanting to like really target these big fish on these big flats, like dude, a flats boat like they use for like red fishing, like sight fishing and stuff, like pretty much the boat you were talking about where it's
yeah,
6 foot, 6 foot hole for the console and like maybe one seat and like a cooler seat, and then the rest is just all deck, and be like you where you have your Yeti cooler up there, or be like those Texas guides that ratchet strap the platforms on. Like you could do some crazy stuff. Get a 30-foot push pole so you have like nothing in the water and you're just maybe a
oh,
drift
I'm
sock.
getting
Like
one.
yeah, dude,
Yep.
it
So
would
we
be
um
so insane.
we had all the motors up for a couple days, and we were using my power pole like a push pole.
Mm,
I'm gonna get a proper push pole, but it works. It
yeah.
helps, especially when you can you know, go silent, get into weird places. Because I mean, essentially what I have is a saltwater skiff,
Mm,
flats boat, 16 foot,
yeah.
drafts like 6 inches. So if I can trim everything up, pull my trolling motor out, I can get into some of those previously kayak only areas, but just need that proper push pull.
Yeah, dude, that's such the ideal setup for what we've been talking about here. And after seeing your boat and
Minus the 2 foot rollers. It
yeah,
does not
yeah,
like those.
yeah, like yeah, after seeing the pictures of your boat and like the cast catches and stuff, I was like, yeah, that's like the style of boat that I would invest in if I decide to stay around here and like if that's the style of fishing I want to do. Like, yeah, you're kind of limited. You can't run across Lake Michigan with 2 foot rollers to go fish Green Bay for a tournament if you want, but you can fish a lot of those inland shorelines and then the Lake Michigan shorelines. Like you could do some crazy stuff out there. So, I mean, that's if you could have two boats, you'd get a like a 20-foot bass boat and then one of those boats, and you
Yeah.
could catch smallmouth all 3 seasons in Michigan. It would be absolutely insane to do that. Um, Going back towards the bait, we were talking about
Yeah.
the gobies being all sorts of different colors. And the funny thing is like you're talking about colors, and if you guys are watching on YouTube or even Spotify, I have like a rusty color, which unironically is like what a lot of the goby I see in my area. Like you said, not that there's a migration map of goby colors or anything, but this is like a really common color I see, like this like red rusty brown color. But it's kind of cool because there's so many variants of colors and so many different hues and shadows and stuff to these gobies that essentially as long as your pour is good, like there's no blems in the actual silicone, like that bait is going to catch fish. Like the color does not that it doesn't matter. Like you were kind of talking about your viewpoints and stuff like on sand lines and stuff with darker baits and stuff, but essentially like you could pick that bait up or send it to somebody and they're going to catch fish on it. It's not like it has to
There
be
will be a time for almost every color that's
yeah,
like a shade of natural.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
there will be a time that that would be the ideal color. Like
yeah.
there's not a wrong color.
Exactly. It's not like it's got to be a hyper realistic shad pattern to fool a six acre farm pond bass that has seen every lure before. Like a goby is a goby is a goby. Like as long as it goby profile has the characteristics of a goby and is a color of one of the gobies in the Great Lakes, like I don't think that you could quote unquote mess up a paint job for a bait like this.
Yeah, shape and movement, I think trump as long as the color is not crazy wrong. It's not
Yeah.
neon blue.
Yeah.
There's hard to make a wrong color because you've got the right profile, the right movement, and you're doing the right things with it. You can make almost any shade of natural work.
Yeah. And then another thing I have written down is I had kind of mentioned it earlier. Have you ever seen those jet black gobies before?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, not the way you'd expect. So I do find there is some predictability or correlation with smallmouth colors and what color they will be. There can be oddballs, but I think generally the majority of St. Clair bass with that like light sandy bottom and kind of that turquoise silty water are and it's not that deep anywhere, so they're almost all this really light tan.
Yep.
Very rarely do you get a true jet black dark smallmouth out of St. Clair. In Lake Michigan, there's deep bass. There's ones that'll live most of their life in 50 to 80, and they still have to come up shallow in the spring to spawn and stuff. But you'll catch these. And like, Jesus, you do not look adapted for this sand flat at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
This is a pitch black fish. So, yeah, so I've seen those similar crazy dark gobies that are probably living down in
Mhm.
100 dude to 200 feet. But I've seen them in places that they don't blend at all. It's very funny. Like, how have you survived this long? Like, you're
Yeah.
on 10 inches of water in the sand, or like you're on this sunny part of a rock flat in a pier
Yeah.
head or something. And like, I mean, it's counterintuitive, but smallmouth guys love just pitch black baits, like just straight profile, pure, no shine, matte black. Beast Coast does that really well. So does Great Lakes Finesse,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
it's matte black is can be the thing. Even in the most counterintuitive conditions, like you think, okay, I want darker water, maybe a cloudy day, throw the matte black. Like nope, sometimes just the brightest sun and the lightest sandy bottom you could think of, and it's just that sharp profile. And it's not even necessarily unnatural with those crazy dark gobies.
Yeah, yeah, and the other thing that I like about because like you mentioned it before, there's no Goby bait out there. Like you mentioned color schemes and stuff. Like Kyle Gracely and I, we did a Goby color finesse gill, and yeah, it's a Goby color finesse gill, but like you said, it's not swimming, it's not doing typical Goby stuff in a untypical Goby like platform there.
Oh,
But
it looked like a rock bass to me. I loved that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
I think I caught some smallmouth on that actually.
Yeah, but it here I actually have it on my wall right here. You camera does not pick it up. But anyway, uh where are we going with that? Um oh, the thing I like about the Goby stuff is because I've seen smallmouth spot eye fish like 13 foot of water. You can see bottom, not obviously as easy as you guys can see bottom up there, but 13 feet of water, and you'll see
Oh,
fish.
enough.
You'll see these smallmouth in 5 feet of water, like pretty high up in the water column. And like they'll be swimming around and then boom, they nose down onto a bait. Like if my buddy's fishing a kayak or something, like there's
Yeah.
like in some spots, like these fish will not move, up and down for baits. But I feel like if it's a big profile, it's a goby, it's just sitting there and it's a Goliath, it's just barely creeping around there, Godzilla goby. Like these fish are just so tuned to see the bait. Oh, that thing is sitting on a rock that I'm gonna go down there, shoot it, eat it, and just swim right back up. Like these fish are just like they fire on all cylinders. Like they will move the water column to come eat these baits, like bottom
So
contact
that's the
baits.
glide bait. That's the I call it the glide bait type behavior that
Yeah.
I have some really crazy videos that I wish I could share, but the spot's too recognizable. But there's places where these fish will suspend, over 30 to 40 feet of water, and they're in no less than the top 5 foot of it. And I have videos where I cast out this,
Hmm.
drag it on the bottom in 40 feet, and I watch about a dozen bass suck off and dive and swarm all to it from 40 feet up. So like, there's people talk about, they'll throw their 250 or their whatever, pick your glide bait of choice, and
Yeah.
you've got fish coming up for it out of a brush pile. It's almost the opposite. They have this profile, this dark silhouette, not silhouetted by the sun, but just by the
Mhm.
color contrast. They see it down low and they're diving. They are
Mm.
just in the way that a fish would jet up to
Yeah.
pin your glide bait or top water to the surface. It's been really cool to see.
That's interesting. That's crazy because the bait just like falls down and they're just like, oh man, there's a goby down there. We're gonna shoot down, eat it, and zip right back up, not have to worry about our air bladders or anything. It's very interesting to see and kind of being stuck on the bank, obviously having the paddle board, but you can't stand up and view stuff like that necessarily. So being able to hear something like that, you're like, okay, like if your buddy's catching them on a spook in 15 feet of water and you bomb out this 6 inch Godzilla, like you don't have to like be real and like, oh man, are these fish even seeing this bait? Because just off the experience I've seen of natural bait or like kitex and stuff, like these fish will just, dude, they come unglued. And it's funny how they do that for a bait like this, and then you throw out a Tiny Clash or a Swim Bait Republic or a Glide Bait or something, and they'll like they're interested, but they're not sold on it like they are something on bottom like that. And it's really interesting because even like those fish on St. Clair, 12 foot down, if you sink a bait down, like I've only ever caught them sinking a bait down to like 8 or 9 feet. And watching it on live scope, you have a crap ton of fish come up and look at it. They'll look at it and go right back down. And it's crazy. But you throw a Kitech out there, or throw, insert smaller finesse swim bait here, they eat it. They don't even think about it. Like you can fish that thing in 5 foot of water and they'll come up and eat it. It's those fish, like I've talked about it before, whether we give these fish too much or not enough credit, like Great Lakes smallmouth are dude, if they're an old big smallmouth, they have been around the block more than once, and they know what's real and what is obviously very close to being realistic that they're going to try to eat it.
The thing that I've seen the most, really with any type of, really most baits, I think when the smallmouth are keyed in on those type of fish, largely gobies, but there are some other species as well that are bottom and rock oriented. You'll get interest from them, reeling it high, glide bait type stuff. They'll take a look at it, and you know, if they're eating alewives or eating schooling bait, if you start zipping it away from them, like trying to get them to react, then they'll go for it. But generally, what they're expecting, like when their prey item is spooked,
Yeah.
it dives, it
Yep.
runs down. So like if I'm just straight reeling a small swim bait, um, and I see I have a follower, a fish looking at it, coming up to it, if I try to pop it up and speed it away up in the column,
Hmm.
they're done. They had enough. And if I kill my rod and pull out extra slack and let the bait just dive to the bottom, and those fish just go down and pin it against the rocks. So
Yeah.
like that's the natural prey reaction that like triggers them to bite. Like, oh shit, my food item is escaping to go hide back in its crevice and hidey hole. So like that there's times when they want up, and there's times when they really, really, really want to go down. And that's like
Right.
what they're expecting from their prey.
Yeah, it's interesting to the alewife thing is crazy because people don't have alewives. It's kind of like a shad. But when those fish, like
Yeah, it's
that's the
shad
only time. Yeah,
gizzards.
yeah, more so. That's just I always when somebody says, "Do you have shad?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we have shad." But uh,
Yeah,
that's like the only time I can ever get the smallmouth to fire up for a glide bait. If not, it's always conventional fishing form, drop shot or whatever else it may be. They're interesting to say the least. Like you said earlier, it's not a river smallmouth. The river smallmouth will eat a glide bait, every other day of the week. But a lake, like in my experience, a Lake Michigan smallmouth, the conditions have to really line up pretty pretty in sync to come and eat even a small 6-7 inch glide bait. Like it's very interesting to experience.
yeah. There's both the alewife thing, and then the other schooling bait, pelagic bait that they'll eat. I mean, there's smelt, but smelts are so small that it's hard to replicate that
Mhm.
with a swim bait.
Yeah.
It's really a different profile. But Cisco or whitefish, which are exceedingly or increasingly rare just because of overfishing, and like the cormorants will demolish them. But that's the other big, larger profile schooling pelagic bait that get the fish fired up for glide type stuff higher in the column, more similar to the alewife bite. So that's the other one you can look for. But those are a lot more further north. Like that's a mid-state and up type thing. You don't really see much of those down in your certainly not in like Muskegon, Holland area. You don't really get whitefish out there. Um,
Yeah, it's interesting. And we haven't even talked about your smell, so we'll kind of touch on that a little bit here, kind of
oh
get
yeah,
wrap it up a
still a
little
work in
bit.
progress.
Yeah, so we've been talking about gobies and you just mentioned the smelt. So what better way to do that? We have these bait fish called smelt that are I don't even know what's like another fish we can compare that to.
It's a tiny little minnow. It's a shiner. It's a
Yeah,
really
it's
thin,
yeah.
wispy, short, not short, long and skinny profile bait
Think of
fish.
like if you guys are from like the ocean area, think of like a ribbon fish, but way small. Are they called ribbon fish? Like the really weird eel, silver looking things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a close enough representation of what we're going for here. So think of that on like a little tiny scale, like a 5 to 7 inch scale with and they have teeth like that too. Actually, they do have some pretty sharp teeth. But those are like I've seen smelt schools and stuff in the spots I fish, but it's not like a common occurrence thing. I catch them in the wintertime, but not necessarily ever see them very much in the spring or summer or fall. But I do know the fish are eating them, and you kind of did something pretty cool with it. So I'll let you talk about that because you obviously know a little bit more about that than I do.
Sure, yeah. I mean, finesse swim bait is, a staple of many fisheries, but like smallmouth in particular, love, your Kayaks, your easy shiners, spark shad is probably the benchmark for me of just like this. If I'm sending someone out to go catch their first smallmouth, like it's hard to beat. Just pick your small swim bait of choice. And with the benefits of silicone, I was like, oh, I'm just going to make a small minnow. These kick ass. They do most of the job of your Kitech, except it's going to last for 50 fish. Um, so this is mostly just a economics and time saving thing. The one that I'm really excited about, this isn't quite ready, so I'll show it off, but it's not quite there yet. But this is a 7-inch smelt, and this is the rolling smelt. So rather than your paddle action, this guy has that forward facing sonar minnow type rolling in the water. I have some cool underwater views of this, but basically on a straight retrieve, this bait will stroll itself and give you that flashing side to side rolling action, which is pretty unique. And it's a scrounger basically. You've seen a scrounger before. You get that kind of movement out of it. These aren't quite ready. Still fussing with it. Trying to get the weight and the balance right. I want this one's tuned for saltwater. It's kind of easier when you just put an ounce and a half in it because you're fishing deeper and heavier stuff. It kind of self heals with that much weight, but I'm trying to get it a little bit lighter for the freshwater largemouth reservoir type guys to be able to use this more effectively. So this guy's we're almost there. Been busy, but working on trying to finish that up. So that's a little teaser, I guess. But yeah, pretty cool. Paddle alternative works great with those the guys mope them up just on the strolling minnows, and this is something that you can create that same action without that just constant
Mhm.
fluttering of your rod tip all damn day and staring at the screen. Like you can cast and wind this and get the same action out of the fish.
Right. Yeah. While we've been talking about the Godzilla, the 6-inch line through that we've been talking about majority of the episode, you do offer three other sizes?
I do, yeah, two right now, but I
Two.
might bring back the third one. Really, the main one is the 3-inch. This is your classic 3-inch jig hooked um, smallmouth bait. This one is a little more specifically Goby profile than some others. More importantly to me, at least, I mean, on top of the silicone, you get this incredible durability out of the tails, and then the head is actually reinforced. So all the jig head baits have this special reinforcing in the head. Anyone that's fished like plastisol um, jig baits will know that after, whether it's scraping on zebra mussels on the belly or a couple fish bites, the jig head will actually pop out of the nose and tear through the plastic. So this is reinforced kind of like rebar and concrete. Like this cannot come out. So the body is locked onto the head. But most importantly to me, the reason I started making this is I think most of the ones in the market are not tuned correctly for your Great Lakes fisheries. So, if I want to put a different Goby type bait on 20-pound fluorocarbon and go throw it on my jig rod and smack some largemouth, that's great. Um, when you have 50-foot clarity, like I need to go down to 10 or 8-pound line at that's an average day, often down to 6. So this has I have a heavier hook option, but the main seller, the main reason I made this is a lighter wire hook that penetrates with much, much, much less effort than your traditional 3-inch Goby bait. Most people are throwing this on spinning gear down to 8 or even 6-pound leader. Um, Being able to cast it just a country mile, just launching it on a spinning rod, and being able to get that really effortless hook set and hook penetration. There's also a hollowed out area underneath the fins that's actually increased gap that some other ones don't have. So you can actually, because even smaller smallmouth, like when they see this, like, oh, yep, that's a goby, inhale, and this thing gets so far back into their throat that if you don't have enough gap, like the hook just isn't able to bury. Sometimes you'll like on older style, like it's really frustrating. I think my hookup ratio or hookup to land or strike to land ratio on some of the older goby baits, like they love biting it and they do not end up in the boat like a solid 40% of the time, just because the way that they hit it, or the way that the hook doesn't quite vary at distance because of this, that, or the third. This has been a huge improvement. We've got Brady caught a 7.5 last week. It was only like the thing was barely 21 inches.
Oh
It was one of
yeah,
the
yeah.
fattest fish I've ever
It's
seen.
insane.
Hilarious fish. Yeah. I mean, I think it was, they like to people joke that, it's like a football, but this was actually
Yeah,
closer to a basketball. This was a hilarious fish.
yeah.
But these have been awesome. This is my other staple that this is probably my best seller and the one I'm the most proud of. They don't always eat a 6 inch. So this is your more traditional, conventional tackle Goby bait. And I think it's, um, I'll say better tuned for, I think, the fisheries that most appreciate that Goby style bait. So, um, yeah, these are the other ones.
Perfect. And then the last thing, kind of let's go through the anatomy of rigging and then the characteristics of the Godzilla. So if you
Yeah,
guys do not
sure.
have a bait in your hand to be looking at, I'm sure JP will hold up and point like he's a science teacher about all the characteristics and stuff and how to rig these baits. Because you posted a video about it a couple of weeks ago and it may have gotten buried now with some of the fish pictures and stuff you've been posting. So
Yeah.
let's hear how you fish this thing, like your line recommendation, hooks you like for certain scenarios, since I know you kind of play it by ear, and then how you rig it and everything too with the line through for the hook.
Yeah, so I think just to back up, I'd like in many ways, this was designed as something I wanted to fish first, and not something that I was like, how do I make the most money off of people? So there's a lot of things that I think, maybe a bigger company would not want to do. So like you wouldn't, I would love to sell you both a slow sink and a fast sink version, but I don't want to have to carry multiple baits myself. So what I did is this nose chamber here um, gives you complete customization over whatever weight you want. So there's this cavity in the nose, and that cavity, telemarketing call. What a great time for that. Just can't leave me alone. So comes rigged with a 1/2 ounce pencil shaped lead weight. And if you want, I mean, 1/2 ounce is really kind of the Goldilocks zone of anywhere from 3 to 20 feet, as long as you don't have current.
Mm.
But you just jam that weight right in there. Super easy, super versatile. With the weight that it comes with, most people aren't even going to need to change it. Um, if you want to go a little shallower, a little slower rate of fall, you can literally pull this lead weight out really easily with any pair of pliers. Cut it in half. Just cut it in a third. Do whatever you want. Knock it down to 3/8. More importantly is that you can go heavier. So, if you want to fish this in 20 out to, I have a guy in Washington that's fishing them in 80 foot with a one
Wow.
ounce tungsten.
Holy
Yeah. So if you can get, yeah, they've got some crazy glacial lakes out there on the east or west coast, excuse me. But if you want to pull the lead out, pick your pencil or teardrop shaped tungsten weight of choice. Because it's silicone, the hole in the nose is pretty stretchy, and the friction just from the sides is going to grip your weight. Excuse me. So, um, pull out your lead, take your 3/4, 5/8, 1 ounce tungsten, shove that guy right in there. So there's no fast rate, no slow sink, no multiple versions. This is one platform that fishes whatever depth you want. So on top of that, um, the way the hook's set up, you can fish them in different ways by just swapping the hook style as well. So, in that ultra clear, shallow, flat stuff, I'm looking for maximum stealth. I'm using a size 2. I think I said size 1 previously. I think 2 actually is a little bit better fit for like as the low end of what's like the smallest profile, what looks the most natural, what penetrates the easiest. So, start with your basic ST36s if you want to be fancy and be a, BKK, ST35, ST. I've used up to 56s just for on some oversized hooks. So it fits anywhere from a 2 to a 2/0. And depending, I mean, your line choice is going to go with your hook choice and the cover you're fishing. So my starting point is 15 pound. Um, if I truly feel like there's no abrasion present and I want more stealth, I've gone as low as 12
Mm.
with a third ST36 or similar 1X, excuse me, hook. So to get your line in, everyone's seen a line through. This is not rocket science. There's a tube, put it right through the tube. And then the different part is that between the dorsals is where the shank of the treble is going to go. So there's a couple ways to do it, but I find the best way is that you're going to take one point of the treble. I think Adrian had one already stabbed in there in his bait.
Oh yeah, I just rigged it actually while you were talking.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not, it might be, it's proprietary is correct, but it's not a common way people have seen line throughs rigged. But basically, the shank of the treble wants to end up down the middle of that cylinder that's between the dorsals. So you can, kind of guide that line through there by hand, or you can use the treble point, stick it through, and then use the barb to fish the line back out the other way. And then when it's all done, you're gonna slide the treble right in. It sounds like a process, but really, once it's just hard to explain because it's people haven't seen it before. But it takes like 8 seconds once you.
I just did it in
Done it.
about 30 seconds while JP was talking. The worst part is I was
Yeah,
scared
the
I
only
was gonna.
confusion has been people that haven't seen it before, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize that was how it's supposed to work." But once they've
Yeah.
seen it, it's not. But so that the treble will sit right there, and whatever method you want to get the line or the hook in there is totally fine.
The only
So
thing I was scared of is that when I was shoving it through, I was scared that silicone was the hook was gonna finally
yeah,
break through,
blowout.
and I was gonna bury that
Yeah.
treble into my thumb just now. That's the only thing. I wasn't talking because I was like, I do not want to yelp on
Oh
on
gosh.
recording when I hook myself.
Yeah. So that was I think my second day of my trip. I took my mom out on Mother's Day, and she buried the shit out of a hook way into her ankle. And we were like, it was deep enough that I wanted to pull it out, and she was not letting me. And she's like, "We're gonna call your aunt, who's a doctor." And then she said, "Don't pull it out. Take her to the hospital." And we were an hour run from the ramp, and then another hour drive back to the hospital. And I was like, "All right, screw it." And I was kind of in a rush, and that's when I just blew the boat right over a rock bar
Oh
and
yeah,
blew
I
out
was
the
about to say
prop.
we talked about that.
So yeah, she's in the marina now, not doing great. But yeah, fun. Pro tip: don't stab your mom on Mother's Day with a fish hook. That's not the move. But she caught her first bass though. That was cool. We had a great day till then. Um, anyway, tangent aside, um, anywhere from 12 to 25 pound line is excellent. Really just depends on what kind of rocks, what kind of zebra mussels, what kind of grass cover, whatnot. I mean, this it's an exposed top hook. The side points do ride mostly against the body, so
Yeah.
these aren't going to snag stuff really. But if you're dragging through the grass, I mean, the top point is going to catch every blade of grass that you can get on. But especially with rock, and this is designed for more open water, and Great Lakes does not have a whole ton of grass. What this does handle extremely well is rocks of
Yep.
any and all sizes.
I
So
was just
because
about
the
to
weight is a little
talk
bit
about
further
that.
back, since it's not a true lead head, it doesn't fall this way. It doesn't dig into rocks. It likes to plane out and sit flat. And then since the head is soft, even if the line pulls into a crevice of a rock, it doesn't get stuck. It'll just bend and deflect, and even just with the reel or like a slight lift of the rod and a change of the line angle, it'll feel like it's stuck for a second.
Mhm.
And it's so good at creating that scenario where like it seems stuck and then it pops free, and then on the fall back down is when you just get slammed.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't. I'd say tips for fishing it are, especially if you're reeling it just off the bottom, because there's no exposed lead head, there's no hard metal on the nose. When you're impacting a rock, it can actually feel like a bite because it feels like a mushy thump,
Mm,
because that's just what the chin is. So, and this will go hand in hand with another tip, but like it just ultimate patience on the hook set is really important for this. There are a lot of times when you'll have a school of fish, at least in clear water, when they can see it and they're attracted to it, you'll have multiple fish that are following it, and you might have the dumbest 3 pounder go to peck at it first. And what we found is that fish under about 19 inches are not usually able to get it on the first try. And they're usually the dumbest also because your 6 pounder is a little bit more wary. If you swing and set the hook on that 3 pounder, and this bait just jerks like a friggin' missile, like you've just yanked the rod and you've swung your 8 foot rod and pulled 12 feet of line and shot this bait to the moon.
mhm.
The 6 pounder that was interested is now spooked. So both because you might have small fish peck at it before you have the big fish actually engulf it, and because of another behavior. These get, even if you fish smaller goby baits and even smallmouth in general, they love double tapping is what we
Oh,
call
yeah.
it, where like when they're convinced that this is a prey item, one of the ways they feed is they will ram, they'll just stun it. They will hit this thing as hard as possible, and I don't even think their mouth is open. Like they
No.
are just pulverizing it, and it feels like holy shit, somebody just hit my rod with a lightning bolt. And then if you're not, mentally prepared and you swing, and you're like, how is nothing there? How is there nothing on the end of my rod? And it's because what they've done is they've smacked it, and they're now waiting to see if it's dead. And you want to either completely, if you get like the mother of all thumps, you can reel slightly and get rod tension and just feel if like, is the bait heavy or is the bait still there? And if it's still there, don't just like kill it. Dead stick. You can do a little bit of line jiggling just to get the tail like wiggling like a dying goby. But what they will do is they will come back and just suck it down head first or suck it in from the side. Like they are, it's a kill strike and then a return to feed. And that goes in with, I think scent pairs really well with this. You can there's some specific goby scents. Procure makes a great one that's really oily and it'll smear on here and stay there, kind of like it's almost like jelly, but it's not water based, so it doesn't just wear off immediately. But they're quite literally getting a taste of it, smacking it, and you want them to come back. So that's some of the biggest fish. I don't know if I mentioned I caught my PB on it's probably in my car, but this exact dark brown
Yeah.
rigged this way, size 2. I think I had it was a ST45, not a 36, but similar size, and had the classic double tap. I had scent smeared all over it and big, a little bit shy of 7.5, 7.3 is my new PB. But thump,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh God, I know better now. I fucked this up enough times to not swing the rod. Um, and sure enough, came right back around and like that kind of like a slurp, gentle thump and a tick on the line, and like there she is, and like reel down and crack him. So patience, patience, patience. Um, don't swing early. Don't swing too much. Slow and steady. Like creep and creep and creep. I mean, it does swim. If you want to just reel it straight, it does that. It's got a great wiggle to it. Even in the open water, it's actually got a really nice fall because of the way the weight's distributed and like the fins kind of plane it out a little bit. It falls close to level while also swimming and kicking on the way down. So like if you lift it up over a rock and then give it slack to fall, really awesome action there. Or like if you pop it out of a snag,
Hmm.
letting it fall. But it does want to eventually get back on or near the bottom. So that's definitely what it's best used for, as opposed to like, I'm chucking this in open water like a mag draft, like 20 feet off the
Yeah.
bottom. Yeah, I'd throw a mag draft. I mean, I don't have to say that's not what it's for. I'm sure it could catch a fish, but I wouldn't say, this is the thing to use for that.
Mm.
But those, yeah, so those are, I think, anyone throwing this should definitely just um, don't zone out. Feel every single movement, even fish interacting with it. Um, you want to think about what they're doing and what you're feeling before you make the wrong move. So even if they, the smaller pecks versus giant slam versus slurp and mushy, and like you've got the weight there. Like anyone that fishes a jig has felt all these bites before,
Mm.
and they will interact with this just the same way as a jig. Largemouth fishermen can probably ignore almost everything I just said because it's only 6 inches, and a largemouth does not have to hesitate
Yeah.
to inhale a 6 inch bait. But it is a little bit more of a commitment for smallmouth. So just be deliberate with your hook sets, what you're feeling, and your reactions to whatever you're feeling.
Heck yeah, man. Where can people, well, you today actually when we're recording this, you had just posted some updates you did to the bait. So
Oh yeah,
beforehand, you kind of had a color coordination system that some people may not have been able to put two and two together. So what are the updates that you just recently made to the bait? And then where can people find these baits to pick some up if they're interested?
yeah. So I won't. I'll just to minimize the confusion. I won't even mention what I used to do
Yeah, yeah, I was
with the
about to say
weights. I
people.
used to I used to list the weights in a different fashion, but now the weight you see on the website is the total weight of the bait when you tie it onto your rod. It's how much weight you're throwing. So uh, that can't make it any simpler than that. And what I've now done is, with other baits, you used to have to guess what freaking weight is this. These are now imprinted with, yeah, this is not going to show up on the camera, but basically between the dorsal fins, it will literally be written in the material, like embedded in the
Yeah.
fin on the inside, so hidden from the fish. Not, I mean, it's 50 feet of clarity. Maybe the fish can read, but they won't be able to see this. So, the weight is now literally written on the baits. With the Godzillas, I mean, there is no, I'm not selling a fast and a slow sink. You get one bait that does both to your
Yeah.
liking. So these are roughly 3 ounce. I don't know if I talked about rod selection actually.
No, no, yeah, talk about that too.
No, I did. Yeah. So conventional guys, this is probably, hopefully, it's at the upper end of your Alabama rig rod. Hopefully, you have, an A rig rod with, 15 to 20 pound line that you can just tie this right on and throw. So swim bait or conventional guys, probably your heaviest rod. Swim bait guys, probably your lightest rod. Maybe not like Leviathan finesse
Yeah.
type lightest rod. So it's 6 inches long, but because of the width, in many, like at least in my experience, I feel like it has the drawing power of an 8 inch bait because of the overall bulk profile. Compared to like a 6 inch mag draft, it's
Yeah.
about twice or 60% wider maybe. And it matches that in weight. So this weighs the same as an 8 inch mag draft. This is 3 ounces unrigged. Once you shove your half-ounce weight in there, it's about 3.5. So yes, it's a soft bait. I wouldn't throw it on. I mean, you could, if you want to put SD56s and heavy hooks in there and put it on your like um, Leviathan Alpha soft bait rod, like sure, like if you feel good sticking them on that hook and just cranking with a boat. Throwing a smaller single size too, like that's a single lipless crankbait hook. So light, basically your lightest rod. I throw this on like a 1 to 4 ounce swim bait rod. A lot of great models for that, but like your Leviathan medium heavy. I've got a Valkyrie 7/8 heavy. Um, Basically, I like something where 4 ounces or the weight of this, I want this to be at the top of the weight range of the rod. So
Mhm.
like Dobbins 5 power, 4 power even. They've got some lighter swim bait sticks. Trying to think what else.
Mike uses that
Ghost Code.
P5
Yeah, the
Destroyer.
835.
Yeah, whichever one
Oh
it
yeah, yeah.
is.
The Destroyer BMG is, he swears by that. I was gonna buy one and then the deal fell through, but I would like to try that. Although I'm always scared of breaking Megabass rods with no warranty, but is what it is. It's a jig, so like sensitivity kills. Like I wouldn't want a straight glass rod.
Yeah.
Whatever swim bait stick you feel has got good sensitivity for that. Um, Line as well. I know I was talking about, you know, 12 to 25 based on the situation, but I'm throwing braid to leader. Partially just kind of out of I despise straight fluorocarbon. That's kind of a personal thing, but also I think the braid to leader at least does help me cast it to the moon. Like I've got 1 to 4 ounce rod, but I've got 30-pound braid on there, and then I'm tying that to a 12 to 17 pound leader. And that leader is still like 30 feet long, like because this is I don't want the fish seeing the braid. I'll
Yeah.
use a really significant leader, but straight fluoro works just fine. If you're not a fluoro hater like myself. But yeah, long cast, parabolic rod. You've got a single treble, so whatever. If you feel comfortable fighting a 7 pound smallmouth on a lighter treble on a broomstick rod, be my guest. But I think we all know better than that,
Yeah.
especially when they jump. I mean, you just want to have that. I barely touched on that part actually. That's the other benefit of the line through is like, yes, there's the single. You get one hook in them from the point, and then when the bait slides up, you get the other points buried into the fish. And then when they jump, you don't have to deal with a 7 pound smallmouth head shaking with 3 ounces of meat. Like you just got straight to the hook. So um, the line through is really useful for that as well as we know smallmouth love to go airborne. So helps a lot. I don't think I've lost a fish that I've actually had a good hook into, which is probably the worst possible thing to say. I should jinx myself, but that's is what it is. Fingers crossed.
Mm. Heck yeah, dude. And then what's the site name so guys can go pick these up?
Oh yeah, yeah. Hatch Match Baits on Instagram, and then the website's linked right in the bio. Hatchmatchbaits dot is it
Yeah,
myshopify.com.
whatever.
Probably gonna
Yeah.
get an actual domain soon, but Hatch Match Baits, Shopify, and Instagram.
Heck yeah, dude. Has it been like just in the last couple of weeks you've been posting pictures of all the packages and stuff going out? Like we had talked, around December, January, you were expecting the springtime to pick up like it has, I assume. Has word traveled fast of match hatch baits and kind of what it entails for somebody fishing one? Like, has it just kind of exceeded what you were expecting?
Um, I'd say yes. I guess with my own personal set, like I guess it's hard to say it hasn't exceeded expectations if
Right.
I've caught my own PB in you know a week of dedicated fishing
And
in
this
kind of
was
the
like
holy waters.
a passion project rather than a bait building adventure. Now look at you now. So kind of in that
Yeah,
perspective too.
I think everyone whose opinion that I really respect and like all the guys that I think are hammers up in the regions that I fish have really latched onto them and really love throwing them. So that's really rewarding. I don't know if it's maybe I'm not the best digital marketer, but I other people are slowly catching on.
Yeah.
It's rewarding either way. Like just seeing people like God, my one friend catching his PB on the
Yeah.
second cast throwing this bait as a lifelong Michigan smallmouth guy is like we're never gonna forget that. So
So cool.
a lot of really cool experiences. The more pictures I get rolling in and the more places they go out to, it's super fun.
And you're gonna have a picture of me holding my PB sheep head tomorrow, so you got that to look forward to. So
Yes.
the
Don't
tails are
call it a
ending.
sheep's head. Just say just call it a drum. This is
Yeah,
your PB
drum.
drum. There's many passionate drum anglers. You're welcome to the crew.
Oh man, dude, I am so excited for these baits. I'm so excited for guys across the country to start getting them and stuff. I saw somebody earlier make a post, or maybe they had commented on your post on Universe, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've been looking for a Goby style bait," or I can't remember if it was like searching or whatever it may be. Beside the fact, they were like, "I'm so excited for this," and you've been making posts, and guys are starting to see this. And if they follow some of our local guys, they're seeing these guys have success on them if they're not posting them on your page. Like it's starting to take off, and I think that it's gonna be like that thing where guys are like, oh, screw the insert small finesse swimmer here. Like I'm gonna fish a match hatch because it's gonna last me 5 weeks of fishing, and I'm only gonna have to buy one, and I'm gonna buy a 6 inch while I'm there, and I'm gonna be able to cover the 8 inch to 1 pound smallmouth like size region with these couple baits. Like it's super cool to see. I'm super excited for you, and just like the experiences and the stories you had with just a week off or a week of the fishing with it. Like it's I mean, yeah, builders are going to talk about their own products, but for you to have cast to catch videos for some of our friends in the group to have fish that they're, some of these guys are going to fish a fairly large tournament on Saturday with these baits tied onto their deck. Like that is something that I think as myself, I'm not speaking for you, but I would look at it and say, wow, like these guys are entrusting these baits that I'm making to outfish essentially anything else on the market for these trophy smallmouth bass, no matter what part of the country you're in, to hopefully, cash a big boy check. Like that is like a crazy pinnacle to think of, like the podium of where your baits are at right now, especially this far into to how or this short of a time you've been doing it. Like that's just from my perspective. I have no hand in your baits if anybody is curious. Like that's so cool to see and so cool to hear too.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm going to be biased towards my own stuff. I think, I built exactly what I wanted to see, but really the stuff like the ultimate validation is other people that, I respect and really value their opinion, like having good stuff to say and being excited to go throw them and pick them for high pressure situations. That means a lot. And I guess I'm guilty of it too. I make it sound like this. I've only fished this for a week. This does have a
Yeah.
little more than that behind it. Like I've had these pumping out since almost a year now. I'd say the week of like that's my annual PTO week where I do nothing but fish for 100
Yeah.
hours straight. So like that's definitely what I consider like the first ultimate proving ground of like when the fishing means the most to me. Like how does it perform in I call them the holy lands of smallmouth fishing, but. Past that, we've been, it is a goby, and it's designed to appeal to, those most picky goby eating smallmouth. But in all kinds of other fisheries, that there's similar ecological roles for the bottom dwelling, scooting along the bottom type of fish. I mean, there's native suckers and sculpin and darters in every fishery. I've had good success. There's no gobies in Maryland or Virginia, and I've caught plenty of fish here in testing and put it together. All kinds of guys throwing them as sucker imitations or juvenile carp. So they're definitely targeted the Great Lakes. I think they could be a staple in that region, but I think it has more of a niche appeal to other fisheries throughout the country, like more specific situations.
Heck yeah, man. Well, JP, dude, I appreciate it. I love that we got to hop on here and talk.
Yeah, glad
We
to be here,
actually,
man.
I was about to say we talked a little bit longer than we were kind of thinking about, but dude, I have no complaints whatsoever. Absolutely awesome to hear you break the bait down, talk about some of your stories, and mind you, we've been talking for maybe like 2 hours or so, but we could have talked for 4 more hours because you have so many stories of just that 1 week of fishing. Like you talked about 100 hours of fishing, and like that's just one of the small sample pools.
Sounds like I
We
need to
could
quit my job.
Yeah, yeah, we could have had. I mean, dude, we could have had a handful of other guys join us on this podcast that we had mentioned, and other guys that we haven't that have already found success with these baits this spring. And this podcast could have gone for 12 hours of us talking about this bait. And if you guys are not in the Great Lakes region, I apologize, but this is like JP said, this is kind of like it could be a staple, or it is quickly becoming a staple in our region. So that's why we focus so much on it. And like JP said, he is catching fish in the salt in Maryland, Virginia area. So if you guys don't have smallmouth, don't feel like these baits don't apply to you. Largemouth, striper, reds. I think you said the copia would eat it too, but or copia. But
Yeah,
there's
they're
like
kind of garbage cans. They'll eat
yeah, like
whatever. But
perfect. Like there's no like this bait is made for this style of fish. That is just the fish that we have talked about because it's where we're from. It's what we kind of have. It's our staple fishery. I guarantee in the fall, dude, if you want me to, I'll go out and I'll vertical jig this thing for lake trout if somebody doesn't think that it'll catch anything other than smallmouth
oh god,
because
I got spooled by a lake trout this
oh
spring. It was unbelievable. So I mean, I was throwing the little one on
yeah.
really light line, 6 pound leader, and usually if they're big enough, like I'll have to go chase them. I've got but it ran directly under this like dock piling thing, so the boat obviously wouldn't fit. So I just got to watch it dump the spool of like 150 yards of braid. Just zoom, just gone. Yeah, I mean lake trout, 80% of their diet's gobies. I think the jig. This is the jig version. We didn't talk nearly as much about this, but there is a 6 inch jig. I'm still struggling to keep the line throughs in stock, so the
Right.
jigs are kind of on the back burner for the time being, but hopefully I can catch up. Uh, the jigs are super cool, and there's heavier versions for lake trout specifically, or like if you're in like St. Clair, if you fish like the Detroit River and jig muskie and like 60 foot, that's another um, pretty damn cool fishery. But yeah, there's other stuff on the horizon. We talked about those like roller smelts. These 6 inch jigs will come back into stock sooner or later. Hopefully. Um, yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Heck yeah, dude. Again, what's the website and then the Instagram for people to follow you if they don't already?
Yep. Hatch Match Baits. My name is JP Hatch, hence the name. And then Hatch Match Baits on Shopify.
Perfect.
Same name both ways.
Yeah, and as always, all that stuff will be in the description, so you guys can go follow and pick up anything from JP's site. Is there a Match Hatch YouTube channel or like a personal YouTube channel? Like, so
There's not.
originally we talked about, you were like, hey, we want to do a podcast XYZ because I don't want to sit in front of a camera and ramble for 30 minutes. But is there gonna
Yeah, I
be
had
like
stuff.
a future where you upload talking videos or like cast to catch breakdowns or anything like that, or is it all just gonna be through Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, if it takes off enough, I think I'll have to branch out the marketing a little wider.
Right.
I don't know that I want to be I can do this in a conversational way, but as soon as it's just like me and a camera,
Yeah.
like, oh crap, what do I do?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think I have influencer in my future, but if there's info dumps that need to happen, I think Instagram's definitely the main one for the time being. I might try to get one of those like linked Facebook accounts just so it can be on two spots at once and like duplicate the stuff. But there's no immediate plans to have a broader content world. I don't know if I'm geared for that.
Well, perfect, man. As always, all JP stuff will be linked in the description. You guys can go follow him. I'll have the Instagram and the website to the to the website link to his site so you guys can go pick some up. Go check out the Instagram, a gajillion pictures, and you guys can see, there's a lot of pictures of stories we talked about, along with people that we talked about that also have pictures posted. This will be going up on Monday, so hopefully one of your boys will be able to cash a check on some of
Yeah,
your
win
lakes
the
on
tournament on it.
Saturday.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. So check the Match Hatch Instagram page maybe Monday or Tuesday for an update because that'd be awesome if we got to see somebody holding the big check or an envelope with a big bass dollar sign on it or something cool like that. But as always, JP, dude, thank you for coming on. Like I said, this
Thanks
was
for having me.
dude, this was I say a long episode, but I say that in the frame of a time frame, not necessarily the conversation we were having. I did not lose interest at all, but it's also because it was stuff that I experience or I get to experience and you've experienced more than I have on top of like we were talking about just the elements to the next degree up of the clear water and stuff like that. So if you guys are on the fence, hopefully you guys listen to this and say, "Oh man, like they're catching fish in 40 feet of water when these fish are in 5 feet. I could probably catch some of my fish in there because it's absolutely insane, man."
Thanks for having me. Yeah, feel like you've been hearing about these since the inception, and so it's fun to finally see the finished product and get our yap on for 2 hours.
Yeah, dude, exactly. Maybe, who knows? Are you going to be coming back up at all this year? I know you have some prior personal obligations, but are you going to be back up in the fall, maybe?
So I've got a bucket list trip planned for the fall that I probably don't want to talk about where, but I'll tell you later. Hopefully, like right when the leaves are changing, I have this really cool spot I want to go. Hopefully catch a muskie. And then 4th of July, I don't know. I've got my wedding at the end of next month.
Yeah,
So I'll
I
be
remember you saying that.
back up in that area, second half of June. Um, I don't think, ditching my new wife in the first couple days to go fishing is really a good move, but it's kind of on brand. So maybe we might make it happen. We'll see.
Hey, good news is Mike might hate me for saying this, but I don't work at all the week of the 4th of July. So if you're around and you get to escape for maybe a couple hours, maybe we can meet up, do some videoing and stuff. But when you come back up in the fall for your bucket list trip, maybe we can meet up and do an in-person podcast and we can break down everything that's happened from here till then. Be kind of cool, your personal experiences and maybe some backstories of some of the pictures and stuff, cast catches that some of these
Yeah, at
guys
this
send
rate,
each
we might
other.
have a 15-pound smallmouth by
Dude, yeah,
October. Who
I
knows?
know it's coming quick. We're breaking bounds every week, but as always, as I said, all JP stuff will be linked in the show notes, his Instagram and then the website as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. JP, again, thank you for coming on, dude. Absolutely blast of a time. I hope you guys enjoyed all this smallmouth Great Lake fishery talk. Hopefully you guys learned something. If you guys ever want to plan a trip to the Great Lakes, now you have a good preface on when to do it, why to do it, and how to do it. But as always, thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you guys on the next one.